I guess you could say I started my World of Warcraft journey a little too late. About one Cataclysm too late. When Cataclysm came out in 2010, I was 12 years old, wide-eyed, clueless, and convinced that Westfall was the hardest zone in the entire game. I didn't understand quests, I didn't read tooltips, heck, I didn't even think we had guides back then. Most of my exploration ended up with me being lost somewhere outside Goldshire, wondering where all the cool blue and purple armor drops. That was my version of Azeroth. The world that was already changed by Cataclysm. The original world, the one that built the most popular MMO, was gone before I even got to see it. Time moved on, expansions came and went, and eventually, I drifted away from the game. Because the more it held my hand, the less I felt like I was actually adventuring. Everything became faster, easier, and emptier. But now, Classic gives me a chance to finally step back in the world that I missed. To slow down, to take it all in, one quest, one fight, one story at a time. There's something grounding about going slow again. Taking on quests that I have no idea where it's actually going to lead me, reading the text, and actually listening to what this world has to say. If you're here for nostalgia, or just to watch me pull 5 mobs by accident, you're in the right place. This is where my series, on my journey through Azeroth, begins. When I first played World of Warcraft, I chose a human warrior. There's something about starting as a human in Northshire that just feels like home. So this time, I'm doing it again. A clean slate. Same class, same race, just a slightly older me behind the keyboard. I spent a while on the character screen, trying to make a character that I was happy with. After a lot of time, I finally made up my mind. Now that the hard part was over, next came the name. My girlfriend just happened to get me a drink from Starbucks, and I couldn't really think of anything else, so I figured, why not? I typed in the name and immediately got hit with unavailable. So I did what every player does. Backspace, add a fancy letter, and boom, name accepted. As I loaded in, I thought about how this time I actually want to finish what I started. To hit level 60. I looked around the starting area, sunlight blazing through the trees, music fading in, and for a second, it felt like I was stepping into the past. This time, I'll make it, I told myself. No sidetracks, no skipping quests, just me, the road, and the journey ahead. I started my journey in Azeroth with a sword in my hand and some tough jerky in my bags. Upon arriving to Northshire, the guard out front sent me to speak with Marshal McBride, the man who oversees new recruits. He greeted me, handed me a new task, sent me straight into the field. My first job? Deal with the kobolds outside the abbey. Before hunting kobolds, I ran into Egan Peltskinner. He needed help with some wolves. I figured it'd be good practice, a warm-up. A few fights later, I realized how fragile my level 1 warrior really was. By the end, I hit level 2, picked up a shield, and learned my first real lesson, patience. Then came the kobolds, small candle-hoarding miners, shouting every time I got close. They weren't very strong, and I took them out quickly. After clearing out the field and taking their candles just out of spite for yelling at me, I made my way back to Marshal McBride and was given another kobold killing quest. While picking up the new quest, something strange happened. I got a random whisper. Some guy asked me to invite his other character for gold. I had no idea what this meant. But I wasn't about to look like a noob, so I said yes. Free money, right? He joined, said nothing, and left. No gold, just silence. I guess I wasn't meant to have it in the first place. A few minutes later, while I was working on some kobolds, another player traded me a glowing red weapon out of nowhere. Turns out, it was the same fiery weapon I saw someone using earlier. When I asked about it, they said some random gave it to me too. So now I'm holding what's basically a haunted community sword. I took it as a sign of good luck, I think. Upon finishing up my quest, I returned to Marshal McBride. He wanted me to go deeper into the valley this time, into the cobbled mine. The tunnels were narrow, filled with noise and shadows. Every corner had another kobold waiting for me to take out. Upon fighting all the way to the back, I spotted a chest and sprinted for it. Unfortunately, there was a kobold I had to fight to get to it, and another player right next to me. I threw everything I could at this cobble to try and get to the chest first, but for some reason, this cobble decided to start dodging all of my attacks. Luckily, in the end, I was able to get the chest though. Clearing out the mines, bags full of candles, I was ready to head back to Marshall McBride, confident to take on whatever task was next. Oh, was I wrong. Upon turning in the cobble quest, I went outside and a guard asked me to deal with the defeats across the river. I thought it'd be just like the cobbles. I was sadly mistaken. I ran up, pulled one, then two more came in. Next thing you know, I was swinging for my life. That's when I realized Northshire wasn't the safe training ground I thought it was. Luckily, by the end, I walked away with a cool new sword that I picked up from one of the Defeat's enemies. Before leaving, I was told to help out Millie Osworth. She needed help recovering some grapes that she left in the field. It was a small quest, but it felt like something worth doing. I also had another quest to take out the Defeat's leader, somewhere in that area, so I figured, why not? Then I saw him. Garrick Padfoot, the Defeat's leader. And he had backup. He fought hard, but I had the fiery blade in my bag and some confidence. A few swings later, it was over. My first real victory. After turning in my final quest, I waved goodbye to Marshall McBride and said goodbye one last time. And I was off to Goldshire to start my next quest. Then I walked down the road out of Northshire. The sun broke through the trees, the abbey faded away behind me, and with that fiery blade in my bag, my journey truly began. I left Northshire behind, following the road south until I finally reached Goldshire. It was a cozy little town where half the population lives at the inn, and the other half send you to die in a mine. Marshall Duggan greeted me with a smile and immediately handed me a list of errands. Explore the mines, collect candles, and gather gold dust. Northshire was the tutorial. Goldshire, that's what the game stops holding your hand. Before I even reached the cave, I found another chest. I must be extremely lucky. Inside the mine, I quickly learned this wasn't Northshire anymore. The goblins hit harder, and there were more of them. Two of them almost made me experience my first death, but somehow I survived, and even looted my first green item. It was a recipe. Not exactly a weapon, but I'll take it. By the time I crawled out of the mine, my bags were completely full. I had to leave loot behind. It was a painful experience for any adventurer. Back in town, I checked the vendor, but I couldn't afford a single bag. That's why I learned something. I was broke. One quest that I picked up earlier sent me to Stormwind, so I made the trip. While turning it in, out of nowhere I received an invite to a guild. They gave me bags, a tabard, even some advice. They were good people. It reminded me why World of Warcraft isn't just like any other game. Sometimes it's not about the quest or the grind. It's about the players willing to help a stranger. On my way back to questing, I stopped by a farm. They needed help with 3 things: kill a pig named Princess, collect boar meat for a pie, and find a missing necklace. That necklace turned out to be in the hands of a cobble named Goldtooth. He was tougher than he looked. I managed to take him down, but not before suffering my first death. It was humbling, but hey, at least I got the necklace. Then came the Murlocs. I was told to collect ingredients for a potion. Easy enough. I had no idea what I was getting into. But on the way I found a lake house. Inside were a dozen children just standing still, staring. No movement, no parents, just creepy background music. I left immediately, and I've never trusted that building again. After fighting through a ridiculous number of Murlocs, I found another chest in their camp. Turned in the quest, and decided I've had just about enough of Murlocs for one day. Following Marshall Duggan's orders, I scouted another mine further east. On the way, I saved a paladin who was about to die from kobolds. Not all heroes wear capes. Then I met guard Thomas. He wanted me to find his 2 missing men. When I found them, they were both already dead. Probably killed by Murlocs. It was a sobering reminder that even peaceful Elwyn Forest has a dark side. And then, chaos. My first horrid encounter. A single player stormed Goldshire, attacking everyone, even Marshall Duggan. Some brave players tried to fight back. I, on the other hand, stayed on the sidelines, doing my best not to be seen. What else was I supposed to do? Throw a rock at him? While waiting for things to calm down, I headed to Eastvale Logging Camp, picking up quests to kill wolves, Murlocs, and gather lumber. Sounds easy, but no. The Murlocs were relentless. I had to team up with another adventurer, and together we killed about 50 of them, for 8 fins. This quest has got to be one of the most painstaking quests in the entire forest. Next up was Brackwell Pumpkin Patch. I finally tracked down Princess, the infamous pig, and after an epic fight, I came out victorious. Nearby, I found Deadtooth Jack in a rare spawn. I still had to collect some bandanas, so I figured why not. I spent 20 minutes trying to kill them, died multiple times, questioned my life choices, so I figured I'd just come back later when I was stronger. Upon returning to Goldshire, Marshal Duggan sent me to Westbrook Garrison. They needed help killing an enemy named Hogger. He was an elite, so I teamed up with another player and together we brought him down. After taking him down, I picked up a quest from a gnoll I had just looted. This quest was called The Collector. The quest turned out to be harder than I thought. The enemy I had to kill had 2 bodyguards, and they were all high level. Luckily, someone nearby jumped in to help. Without them, I would have been stuck on this quest. After finishing up all the forest quests, I decided to get some training and follow up on my warrior quest. So I headed to Stormwind and greeted my trainer for a new quest. It involved starting a bar fight. After punching a drunk, I was awarded with some new abilities to help me on my travels. Apparently that's what passes for professional warrior training around here. After receiving the new abilities, I was told to head back to Eastvale to receive my reward. Upon arriving at Eastvale, I was told to hunt down Deadtooth Jack, the same guy who gave me trouble earlier. This time, he didn't have backup. The fight was clean, satisfying, and I finally got my revenge. And my reward? A brand new green item sword. Before leaving Elwyn, I decided to make a quick trip to Stormwind, just to prepare for the road ahead. I figured I'd grab some cooking supplies, maybe learn a recipe or two. Then I saw the auction house prices. Apparently, wolf meat is some kind of luxury item in this game, so I thought to myself, that's one way I can buy some bags for my journey. I also asked my guild what they thought I could do to make some extra gold. They suggested I pick up herbalism and alchemy. Pick some flowers, make some potions, and get rich. Sounds easy enough. Before heading out into the next zone, I figured I should get a little bit more prepared. A little more bag space to work with. But bags don't exactly grow on trees, so there was only one thing left to do. Kill every wolf in Elwyn Forest. I stayed in Elwyn for a while, long enough that I started recognizing where all the wolves spawned in at. Every clearing, every patch of tall grass, I was there killing, looting, and having fun while doing it. Some wolves dropped meat, and some dropped green items. I didn't care at the end, I was just having fun with my new sword. But over time my bag started to get full and I was running out of room. By the end of it, I had 80 pieces of wolf meat, a handful of greens, and I leveled up. It was honest work, and for the first time I felt ready to move on, not just as an adventurer, but as someone who can afford repairs and be able to buy cool gear. After stopping by the auction house to sell my loot, I was richer, stronger, and ready for my next adventure. Next stop, Westfall. I left Elwyn Forest behind and stepped into Westfall. The green hills faded into dry, golden plains, quiet, windswept, and almost empty. I was immediately greeted by the Furlbrows, a couple of farmers that were on their way out of Westfall. Farmer Furlbrow asked me to help find his lost pocket watch that he had to leave behind on the farm as they were escaping from the Defees. His wife gave me a recipe and asked me to give it to the Saldines down the road, as well as gather some sacks of oats. The mood felt different here, like the land itself had given up. Abandoned farms, quiet roads, and the wind carrying nothing but the sound of empty homeland. Down at the Saldine farm, I handed out the recipe and received a grocery list in return. Vultures, gortus, okra, murloc eyes, all for one bowl of stew. The problem? Not a single gortusk in the entire zone seemed to own a liver. By the time I found enough, I'd wiped out half of the local population. Each fight dragged on. Vultures diving from above, boars charging at me, and murlocs screeching from the shoreline. A slow grind for ingredients that barely seemed worthwhile. Upon turn-in, the Saldines gave me their stew, and I got half my bag space back. Next up was that pocket watch. I found the Furlbrow's farm, but I didn't expect what I saw inside. A level 15 Defees named Benny Blanco. He wasn't alone. The place was crawling with bandits, all red bandanas and daggers ready. The fight was intense. Every swing was a race between my sword and his sword. Fortunately, and to my surprise, he went down rather quickly, and I found the pocket watch. After scouring what seemed like every field in Westfall, I was able to find all the sacks of oats I needed, and I returned to the furrow browse. The couple thanked me and gave me a new bag for my troubles. After heading further south, I received some quests to take out the thieves in the area. I hunted them down in the fields and gathered their red bandanas as proof. The sun burned down overhead. The fights blended together into one long blur of dust, sweat, and bandanas. After completing all the kills for the quest, I decided to move on to what was the most aggravating quest in the zone. The Gnolls. I'd received a quest to collect their paws back in Sentinel Hill, and you'd think that since they'd have 2 arms, these things would drop, but no, you'd be mistaken, just like I was. Every encounter felt like its own battle. Sometimes I'd fight one, only to have 2 more wander in. Horrible drop rates, long respawns, and half the zone was competing for the same mob. Not only were these things scarce, but if you pulled too many, you would surely die. Every kill felt like a gamble, and every victory earned me a little chance at encountering just one more paw. By the end, I finally completed the quest and returned to Sentinel Hill, exhausted but relieved. After all of that, I took a break and decided to head back to Stormwind. I checked my mail. Turns out that wolf meat that I sold made me rich. With all my new money, I started looking at some bags to help me with my space, and I also found a cool sword that should help me on my travels. While here, I also leveled up my cooking and decided to cook all the clam meat I got from the Murlocs earlier. For once, I didn't feel like I was broke anymore. For the first time since Northshire, I felt I was ready for what was next. When I returned, Westfall felt a little less lonely. Upon going back and killing more Defees, I joined a group doing the same quest. Together we took out all the Defees in the area and fought the Harvest Watchers. These Harvest Watchers were massive. Metal beasts that stomped through the fields, gears grinding as they swung their arms like clubs. I charged in, helping out my teammates wherever I could. It was chaos, but the good kind. The kind that reminds you why this world is alive. It was nice to be able to enjoy the game and have help from the community while questing. After turning in the last of my quests, I realized I'd done all I could here. Most of what was left was too high level, and when I asked my guild what to do next, they suggested I head to Lockmode Inn. So I did a quick search and found that I would have to head back to Stormwind and catch a train to Ironforge. Ironforge was beautiful. Massive halls, lava flowing from the ceilings, dwarves everywhere. I wandered around the city for a while, just taking it in. The forges, the sound of hammers, the general player base. It was cool to see another area just as crowded as Stormwind. It makes the game feel alive. Then I headed out of the city and east towards Lockmode Inn. It was cool to pass through the snowy environment and hear the wind howling like a desolate mountain zone. Eventually, the snowy peaks gave way to steep cliffs, and 2 massive statues guarded the entrance to Lockmode Inn. It felt like entering a new world. Relaxing, warming, and just like Elwyn Forest. I picked up my first local quest. Go kill some trogs. It was an unfamiliar enemy, but nothing I couldn't handle. Being a little over-leveled helped too. Each fight was quick, and I was able to complete the quest within a short time. They also dropped stone teeth, which I also needed for another quest, so it was nice to knock out both of them together. Honestly, Lockmode Inn was off to a solid start. After finishing that quest, I decided to take a break, not in-game, but to explore add-ons. I've seen other players using them and figured I'd give it a shot. I installed Questy to track quests on my map, Atlas Loot to see what drops in dungeons, and Auctionator for the auction house. It felt like I was upgrading, from clueless adventurer to organized professional. Now I could see everything on my map, quests and objectives. It was like discovering a whole new layer of the game. I headed back out to kill more trogs and started to get lucky. I found multiple chests and even pulled 3 green items in a row. It was like the game was apologizing for Westfall. Eventually I made it to a small village called Thelsamar. It reminded me of the Hobbit homes from The Lord of the Rings. The quest here sent me after kobolds and wildlife for cooking ingredients. At first it was smooth. Everything was way below my level, and I could pull a few at a time. But the drop rates, they were awful. 50 kobolds later, I still didn't have all the ears I needed. Eventually, I just gave up and moved on. Next, I got a quest from Mountaineer Stormpike to recover miner gear from an old mine. There were kobolds inside, so I doubled up my progress, doing both quests at once. Inside the tunnels, I fought kobolds while collecting the miner gear, and I was able to complete both of the quests. After turning those in, I went back to hunting wildlife, and somehow, That was even worse. I must have spent an hour going back and forth killing spiders and bears for all the quest drops. By the end, I was convinced the game was mocking me for thinking this zone was easy. After all that was said and done, I noticed something. Questy made everything too easy. It showed me where to go, what to kill, and what to pick up. And while it helped, it also killed the sense of discovery. So I made a decision and I uninstalled it. I decided to keep Atlas Loot and Auctionator since they didn't guide me. They more of just gave me information. With that, I ventured out again. As I was exploring, I found a quiet fishing hut down by the lake. I decided to take a break and started leveling my fishing there, just enjoying the view and the sound of the water. It was peaceful. One of those rare moments where you forget about the XP bar and leveling and just enjoy the world. When I was done, I realized something. I had no idea where to go next. Without Questy, I was completely lost. Only one quest in my log had directions, so I followed it south toward an excavation site. On the way, I saw some dwarves standing next to some TNT. I had no idea what they were doing, so I just kept walking. At the excavation site, I quickly found out it was far outside my level range after picking up a quest. So I set out to find a gnome named Bingles, who'd actually crashed his plane somewhere in Lochmoden. After searching it up because I was completely hopeless, I found him. He asked me to recover some of his tools from the local trogs. Simple quest, right? Wrong. Every item was surrounded by trogs, and these were now my level. Each fight was a test of timing. Pull one too far, and two more followed. I died. A lot. Eventually, I ran into another player on the same quest. Together we fought our way through and finished it. It was by far the hardest quest in the entire zone, and I was happy to finally be done with it. After turning those in, I found a hunting lodge on the east side of the lake. The quest here came with time limits. Kill enough wildlife before the clock runs out. I didn't know who thought this was a good idea, but it was the most stressful questing I've done yet, and the whole time, I was getting picked on by some guy named Daryl. Once that was done, I was tasked with going after Ol Sooty, a level 20 elite bear. I was level 16. Thankfully, I found another player in chat and together we took him down barely. The fight was brutal. I was chugging potions like my life depended on it, and the other person in my party was fearing the bear just so that way it wouldn't kill me. When we finally killed the bear, I took its head and I brought it to Daryl. I think it traumatized him. Probably made him regret ever knowing me. At this point, I decided I was done with Lochmoden. Time to head back to Westfall. Lochmoden was beautiful, frustrating, and full of surprises. It tested my patience, my luck, and my inventory space, but it was worth it. Every zone teaches something new, and Lochmoden taught me to slow down, explore, and have fun. After trying to figure out where to go, I saw that my next quest was in the southern area of Westfall, in Dagger Hills. I finally found the Defees, and they were a bit higher level, but I was confident enough to handle them. The first few went smoothly, one at a time, clean fights, no issues. Then I got overconfident, and I pulled two. It quickly turned into me using all my abilities just to stay alive. Somehow, I managed to take them out, and after scouring up and down the hills, I was finally able to complete the quest. On my way out, I noticed a lighthouse far off the coast. It stood out, quiet and distant. I figured I'd check it out later. When I turned in the Defees quest, there was no follow-up. No next step. No clue where to go. Just Gyre and Stoutmantle looking at me. So after a quick search, I realized there were more quests at that same lighthouse I'd spotted earlier. So I headed out again, not realizing how long I'd actually be at the lighthouse area. When I arrived, the keeper gave me 3 quests. Clear the murlocs along the coast, collect some oil, and take out their leader, Murkai. It didn't take long to find him. He was level 20. He stood out from the rest of the murlocs, and he came straight for me the moment I stepped onto the beach. The fight was close. I had to use everything I had. One more hit, and I could have died. Luckily, at the last moment, he turned around and started running away, giving me my opportunity to take him down. The rest of the murlocs weren't much easier. They were everywhere, usually in groups, and half the time would end up running and pulling more. I spent a long time slowly clearing the beach, one pull at a time. At one point, I found a fisherman standing alone on the edge of the coast. No quest, just fishing. It was simple, but it made the world feel more alive. So I decided to join him for a bit. I fished my way down the coast between fights, found a few chests, picked up some greens, and enjoyed the sounds of the ocean. Then, while I was fishing, I just so happened to look up, and saw at least 10 murlocs running at me from the water. I didn't even have time to react. They surrounded me and it was over fast. Not my proudest death, but honestly it was bound to happen sooner or later. After that, I played it safe. I worked my way south, carefully clearing what I needed for the quest. The last step was gathering oil from the harvesters to power the lighthouse lamp. Compared to everything else, this part was simple. The enemies were much lower level and I cut through them easily. After turning everything in at the lighthouse, I leveled up. Finally, I was level 18, which meant I was finally able to wield my blue weapon that I was so patient to use. It felt like a good way to close my time out in Westfall. I headed back to Stormwind for training and to sell some loot. While there, I asked my guild chat if anyone could enchant my rare blue weapon. A fellow guild member replied right away and told me to help me out. When he met me, he looked at my gear for a second and said, "Hold on." A few minutes later, he came back from the auction house and opened up the trade window. Inside was a full set of new gear, all enchanted. I didn't know what to say. It was one of those moments that reminded me why I enjoy this community so much. The people here. They make the world feel real, and it's not every man for themselves. So big shout out to my guild, Top Soul. I couldn't have asked for a better group of teammates to help explore this game with. I made my way into Redridge Mountains from Elwyn Forest. It already felt nostalgic. I kind of missed Elwyn's peaceful fields, but this was new adventure territory. A guard greeted me as I entered the pass and told me to report to Lakeshire. As I crested the final hill, I got my first look at Lakeshire, a small, quiet town, nestled perfectly beside the water, reflections of the red cliff dancing across the lake's surface. It was beautiful. While I was picking up quests and getting to know the locals, a party invite popped up on my screen. I accepted it, figuring I could use some company, and seconds later, a whisper came in. Dead Mines? Just that one word. It is my first ever dungeon in World of Warcraft. And funny enough, it wasn't even here. It was back in Westfall. So I packed my things and began the journey back to Westfall, excited to try my first dungeon. When I got there, a few other guild members were already waiting. Turns out one of them, Tinkling, runs dungeons all day, every Monday on his stream, just helping out other guild members. Honestly, I thought that was awesome. I was just grateful that they even invited me along. What I didn't expect though, was to do absolutely nothing. Tinkling told me just to stand back and to watch your XP bar, so I did. And then it happened. My bar shot up by half a level in seconds. I was stunned. I decided to stay for another run, half for the loot and half just to hang out with everyone. The energy was great and I was generally having fun watching it all unfold. After the runs, I stopped by Stormwind to turn in some of the quests that people had shared with me. Before I knew it, I was level 21. It happened so fast I didn't even process it at first. Then came another invite, this time for the Stockades. Another dungeon right here in Stormwind. I joined, but I'll be honest, something felt off. Standing around while others cleared everything, it reminded me too much of when I had Questy installed. It just felt like cheating. This series is about my journey through Azeroth, the struggles, the leveling, the small victories, so I decided to step away. I thanked them all, said my goodbyes, and quit the group, feeling clearer about what I wanted to do and what I wanted this adventure to be. Before heading back into Redridge, I had one last thing I wanted to do. That old Defease Brotherhood questline had been sitting in my log forever, and I felt like it was the right way to close out this chapter. This quest wanted me to speak with someone called Matthias Shaw in Stormwind, and from there, back to Westfall to hunt down a messenger. Now, I'd seen people complaining about this quest plenty of times in the game. Apparently, the messenger is impossible to find. Luckily, another player was doing it too. So we decided to team up, and after some searching we finally found him. We turned in the quest and chatted a bit and ended up deciding to keep playing together. Our next mission? Escorting the defeased trader to Moonbrook to find the entrance to the Dead Mines. Simple enough. I was higher level now, so it went pretty smoothly, but the atmosphere, marching that trader through enemy territory, it just felt awesome. Then it happened. My new friend asked if I wanted to tank Dead Mines. There was one slight problem though. I had no clue how to tank. So I did what any responsible new player would do. I looked up a guide on YouTube. I watched a 2-minute how to warrior tank video, came back and told the group, alright, fair warning, this could go horribly wrong. And with that, I charged in. It was chaos and it was awesome. I was losing aggro half the time, hitting taunt like my life depended on it. We fought through all the bosses in the Dead Mines until we finally broke through that massive door. Then I saw it, the iconic Dead Mines ship. It looked huge, glowing lanterns and wooden masts towering overhead. We climbed aboard and ran into my favorite boss so far, Captain Smite. He was relentless, stunning us, swapping weapons mid-fight, but we got him. And then, it was time. Edwin Van Cleef, the man behind everything. The one whose influence stretched all the way back to Northshire. From the kobolds back in Elwyn Forest, to the Defees in Westfall. This was him. And it was time for me to prove myself. So I charged in, and we fought hard and finally took him down. As we were celebrating, someone said, wait, there's one more. We jumped down and there he was, Cookie, the Murloc boss. We took him out too, and just like that, I leveled up. And that was it. From my first steps in Northshire, to discovering dungeons, meeting new guildmates, and finally putting an end to the Defees. It felt like an end of a chapter. The world felt a little bit bigger now. I had more friends, more experience, and honestly, a stronger connection in the game than ever before. Next time I'll return to Redbridge, properly this time, and start the real adventure. This is only the beginning. Last time, I left Northshire Abbey with nothing but a blade and a dream. I survived the quiet forest of Elwyn, taking on a pig named Princess. I crossed the broken plains of Westfall and got destroyed by a defeased villager. I made my way into a tucked dwarven land and got lost looking for a gnome named Bingles. I even tanked my very first dungeon, but this time the world pushes back. I received items I didn't even understand. I fought through real battles, experiencing my first bit of PvP. I survived moments I never thought I would. The bosses were brutal, and some fights, I had to win completely alone. This is my story, my journey, through World of Warcraft Classic, Episode 2. When I finally made my way back to Redridge Mountains, I picked up all the quests I missed the first time around, including a warrior quest that literally started with me getting drunk. Apparently every warrior trial involves alcohol and poor decisions. I had to chug a mug of ale, stumble my way all the way up to Wrathband Cavern, and make it back before the time ran out. When I finally finished it, I was rewarded with a shield, but unfortunately I had to go all the way back to Stormwind just to get it. So far being a warrior just means starting bar fights and getting drunk. I think this is an awesome way to portray the class. After completing the warrior quest, I headed down to the lake to deal with the Murlocs. I could see them off the coast a little bit, and I was kind of worried that I would pull too many. So I started pretty slow, pulling just one at a time, then 2 at a time. For once, I didn't feel like I was being chased off by 18 Murlocs. The Murlocs didn't stand a chance this time. Then came the Dragon Whelps. Fireballs hitting like actual trucks, and of course, terrible drop rates. I spent what felt like half an hour going across the zone, killing and looting just to come up empty-handed. This grind was starting to make me feel like I was losing my sanity. After being impatient with the Dragon Whelps, I just moved on to the Gnolls. And honestly, it felt relaxing just to take them out. For once, I felt like I was in control of the fights. I wasn't second-guessing every pull, I started grouping enemies together, and I just walked right into their camps. I could feel the difference. I was stronger, more confident, and after clearing them out, I moved toward the nearby orc camp. It was the same steady rhythm, even though they hit a little bit harder, but I was ready. It felt like a real test compared to everything else. I stayed a little longer than I needed to, not because I had to, but because it was nice to just attack something that wasn't screaming at me like a murloc would. After clearing out all the valley, I finally delivered this guy's lunch. He was just standing there, alone, in the rain, just waiting. I kind of felt bad. He gave me a follow quest to go get some flowers for his girlfriend. Or girlfriends. Yeah, 2 of them. Now I see why he lives out on the edge of town. I teamed up with another adventurer to save a guy trapped in a cave. I didn't realize how hard the enemies outside the caves hit, and I paid for it. I died pretty fast. I'm starting to realize that the caster enemies in this game hit really hard. And then out of nowhere, a server shut down. It popped up out of nowhere. Unfortunately, we had to disband the group before we could even start the rescue. When I logged back in later, I had leveled up after turning in some quests. Then I realized I had mail. And oh my did I have mail. I checked my mailbox, item after item after item. The auction house did not disappoint. No talking, no commentary, just listen. This sound right here might actually be the best sound in the game. After that, I headed back into the hills to hunt down Yowler. He was surrounded by multiple enemies. My health dropped way faster than I expected, and I barely made it out of there alive. But fortunately, I was able to overcome the encounter. And on the way to my next quest, I spotted something massive. A really cool looking stone castle, just sitting there in the middle of nowhere. I walked closer, targeted an enemy, just to find out it was an elite, and then another one. And I immediately turned around and ran the other way. Not today. After the castle, I pushed toward the area where I had to collect Shadowhide pendants. That's when I ran into Lieutenant Fangor. I thought I could handle it. I was wrong. I died, ran back, tried again, died again. At this point, you think I'd learn. That's when I stopped trying to be the main character. And I called for backup. I called for the guild. That's when everything changed. My guild started showing up, one by one, standing beside me. We weren't random players anymore. We were the team to beat. We shared all our quests, compared what everybody needed, then we went to work. We took down Fangor together, then headed straight for the castle. Orcs lined the walls, elites inside, bosses everywhere. It felt like an actual dungeon. It was chaos but controlled, fun but focused. This was the part of the game I didn't expect to love so much. I normally like playing games alone, so that way I don't have to rely on any other people, but this game is showing me just how fun it is to experience the game with others. After clearing out the castle, we decided to stay together. There was one more task to complete, the escort quest. We headed in the cave that I tried to get into earlier. Fought our way through the tunnels, groups of orcs waiting around every corner, fighting our way past them. Deep inside we finally found him. Kishin. And then came the slowest walk of all time. You would think a rescued soldier would want to get home. But no, he just walked. When we finally stepped back outside, the orcs had all the time in the world to form a small army, and we cut straight through them until the path was clear. After everything was finished, I turned in every last quest, said goodbye to my guild, and slowly walked out of Redridge, toward a new zone, the wetlands. And something told me, things were only going to get harder from here. I entered the wetlands through a narrow pass called Dun Algaz. The first quest I picked up was basically go kill some orcs. Just because. No big story, no long explanation, just killing. I was very overleveled for this area, and I made full use of it. I cleared the camp out very quickly. It honestly felt like taking a weed whacker through the field of horde. I even pushed all the way up to the tower before finally moving on. After descending into the tunnels, I finally stepped into wetlands. And that's when it hit me, how high up Dunmoreau and Lockwood Inn actually are. Those zones are literally on top of mountains. Then I opened my map and realized this zone is massive. I spent at least 5 minutes just walking. I had to Google where Menethil Harbor was, just because the map gave me nothing to work with. This place felt more like a marathon practice than a zone. After grabbing every quest I could find, I started with the Murlocs. The ones I had to kill? Easy. I just roamed around the marsh and cleared everything I saw. But the boss? Completely missing. I searched the swamps for way too long, going back and forth, until I finally found him. casually out for a walk, like he was just doing his daily cardio. After turning in that quest, I was told to find a statue of a war hero, conveniently located at the Murloc camps I had just cleared. And no, I couldn't loot it earlier. So I went back out into the marsh, cleared the camps again, and again. This turned into a wild goose chase, camp after camp until I finally found it. After finishing up the Murloc quest, I move on to the oozes. I was hunting them just to find a lost purse. The actual fighting, easy. The loot, not so much. I spent way longer here than I wanted to. After turning that quest in, I wandered further north than I probably should have. I started seeing dwarves fighting other dwarves, some of them were elites. I didn't understand what was going on, but I grabbed every quest anyways. Then, someone mentioned a dungeon I'd never done before. Shadowfang Keep. Once I saw where Shadowfang Keep actually was, I realized I made a mistake. I started running, and just didn't stop. Horde everywhere, higher level mobs all over the place, sketchy roads. I checked the time before I left. When I finally got there, it had been about 30 minutes, and somehow I made it. When I stepped inside, the whole place was full of worgen. Werewolf type enemies everywhere. We started cutting our way through the castle, boss after boss started going down, and one of them was a seasonal boss, Sever. Apparently he only shows up during Halloween, and he dropped some pretty cool loot. There was this one axe that only drops during a certain time of the year. At the very end, we ran into Archmage Argyle. Upon my group getting his health down a little bit, he decided to turn me into a worgen mid-fight. Luckily, I broke out of it, and I ran back in to help my party finish him off. And with that, Shadowfang Keep was complete. After finishing Shadowfang Keep, the wetlands started feeling like it was pushing my limits. The quests were getting harder and requiring higher levels, so I decided to go somewhere new. Duskwood. As soon as I walked into the zone, the lighting changed fast. The zone felt a lot darker than peaceful Elwyn, and everything looked like it wanted to kill you. Wolves started running out into the road trying to attack me, as I'm just trying to make my way into the town in the first place. I finally made it to Darkshire, and I picked up every quest I could. Guards were walking their routes like everything was normal. The town seemed like it was just doing its own thing. Then I saw it. Stitches. He walked into a full guard patrol and wiped them out. I just stood there thinking, yeah, I'm not ready for whatever that is. My first real quests in Duskwood were simple. Kill some skeleton warriors and kill some skeleton mages. I spent a while just running back and forth clearing them out. My sword was glowing brighter than anything in the entire zone, which I thought was awesome. Then I moved to the next quest to kill some worgens. That's when things changed. The worgens were my level. These were no easy kills. No sloppy pulls, I just had to slow down. The Shadow Weavers were especially bad. If I pulled two, I was fighting for my life. After turning in the quest, Classic WoW happened. I got sent straight back to the same area, basically the same enemies, just slightly different names. At one point, I pulled too much and I actually died. Eventually, I completed the quest and left that area. While traveling across Duskwood, I made a mistake. I ran into a Horde player. My first Horde encounter, alone. He just stood there, on his wolf looking at me. I did the most peaceful thing I could think of. I waved. Peace offering, right? We're cool, right? Then he followed me. And then he vanished. You can probably guess what happened next. When I finally found my body after running across the entire zone, I saw him chasing another Alliance player with all of his gear off. This was pure cinematic gold. After clearing out the skeletons in the area, I found a hermit living in a shack. He started sending me all over the zone to collect strange items for him. One of the quests had me collect a comb from a ghost. While I was back in town, I picked up another quest to find a mirror from that same exact ghost. That mirror happened to be carried by a ghoul nearby. While I was waiting for the ghoul to respond, I ran into another Horde player. I instantly knew I didn't stand a chance. They made very quick work of me. Just a quick reminder that if I see any Horde player, they are not friendly. Later on, while I was questing near Raven Hill, I ran into that same Horde player again. There was no room for escape. They used a fear ability, making me run straight into nearby mobs. I pulled way more enemies than I could handle,
and I didn't last long. I'll be honest, this was pretty creative. While heading down into the crypts, I ran into 2 other players doing the same quests. One of them was a mage, and he was doing this massive ice storm spell that looked really cool. Then things went wrong pretty fast. He died, and somehow that was my fault. I got yelled at for not charging into 20 enemies. I decided that's not going to happen. So we just disbanded the group, and suddenly, I was alone again. After everyone left, I stayed in the crypts. I wasn't done yet. That's when I spotted it. A rare enemy just standing there. I went in confident, took a swing, and immediately realized I misjudged everything. My health dropped super fast, and I died. I ran back, tried again, lasted a little bit longer, still died. Third try, I slowed down, and just barely survived. The loot that dropped? An item with negative stamina. I still don't know who that item was meant for and why anybody would want it in the first place. After finishing up in the crypts, I spoke to the hermit again, and this time he sent me out to go find a crate that some ogres took from him. This sounded super simple. It was not simple at all. I thought I could handle it, I walked in confident, and then immediately started running for my life. That's when I learned a lesson. Ogre caves are not easy as I thought. While I was in town, Stitches showed up again. I figured this was my time to try and take him down. So I charged him with the guards, blade swinging, guards dropping around me. I kept fighting on, pushed forward, and my health was slowly going down. Stitches barely even noticed me. One by one, the guards fell. I looked around for help, and that's why I noticed it. Commander Evanlock, just standing there, watching. Front row seats. She might as well had some popcorn. I died right in front of her, and right after, the town crier yelled that the town was safe. Yeah, I totally believed that one. After everything with Stitches, I went back to the ogre cave. I spent about 20 minutes searching. I looked around for the crate everywhere. In the cave, around the cave, in the back of the cave. I was completely lost. No idea what I was doing. Then, I saw it. The crate, sitting right outside the cave the entire time. Shortly after, the boss spawned. I fought him, killed him, and never went back to that cave again. After turning in the crate, I was asked to deliver a note to the town mayor. That's when everything made sense. The hermit was the one sending Stitches. The whole time. Every quest, every errand, I wasn't helping the town. I was helping him. After learning the truth, I headed back to Raven Hill. I was given a quest to deal with the hermit's wife. On the way there, I ran into my guild leader, completely by chance. He just happened to be in the same area, and he offered to help me take her down, and honestly, I probably needed it. During all of this, I had my first real one-on-one PvP fight. It was an undead rogue. Him and I were attacking each other, running after each other, and the fight was pretty close. And I honestly felt like I was about to win that fight. Then, a much higher level player showed up and decided to intervene. I died almost instantly. There wasn't really anything I could do. Once I spawned back in, I ran into that same player again. This time, it was a fair fight. No interruptions, no surprises, just a clean fight. I charged in and started going to town on him. And this time, I won. My first real horde kill. Fair fight, fair win, and it felt completely earned. I decided to take a break from Duskwood and head back to Stormwind. On the way, I ran into something completely unexpected. The Darkmoon Fair. Lights, music, crowds everywhere. It actually felt alive. It was really cool to see this sort of thing inside the game. Then I watched a horde player get taken out right in front of me. That's when a random player walked up to me and decided I was one of them now. They told me I wasn't just a traveler anymore. I was a protector of the Darkmoon Fair. Once I made it back to Stormwind, I saw something I didn't expect. An orc, just standing there on top of a tent. Peacefully. Holding a fish. Honestly, it was one of the coolest outfits I've ever seen so far in the game. Unfortunately, it didn't last. He got taken out by some Alliance members, so I gave a quiet moment for the fishy orc. While standing there, the same player from Darkmoon Fair showed up again. She told me not to succumb to the town sickness. then gave me some food, and walked off. I took that as a sign that I was meant to hit level 60, and it was also really odd that she just popped up out of nowhere again. While I was in Stormwind, I continued a quest I received from Darkshire, the Stalvin questline. It started with checking old boxes, and this particular box just so happened to have a ghost in it. Then the quest told me to go elsewhere to the next location in the questline, and then it just kept going. It sent me back to Eastvale logging camp, then to Goldshire, then back again. I don't think I ever stopped running during that whole quest. While I was in the middle of questing, my guild told me to check my mailbox. I thought it was a joke at first, but I walked up and opened it. Weapons, armor, all green items, every single one of them coming from my guild. I just can't get over how nice of an experience my guild has made this game for me. Ever since I joined, they found ways to help me out on my journey, and I can't thank them enough. So without further ado, I went to the best cinematic spot I could find. Then I started equipping everything. Chest piece, gloves, boots, legs, watching my character slowly change. Then, I equipped my weapon, turned the camera, took in the whole new look. This wasn't just new gear. This was my guild standing behind me, encouraging me to continue my story. And yeah, I look pretty green. While I was there, I decided to finally level up my alchemy. I learned I had to go to a place called Darnassus. I found another player who teleported me there, and I trained my alchemy and leveled it up. After running across half the Eastern Kingdoms and donning my newly equipped gear, I finally made my way back to Duskwood to finally finish the Stalvin questline. Once I found him, I made short work of his friends outside and went in to take him on. The fight went very quickly, as my new gear carried me to new heights of DPS that I never knew before. And it was done. I picked up my reward, stood there for a second, and pointed myself back towards the last zone, back towards wetlands. When I made my way back to Manethil Harbor, I decided to continue the quest for the Lightforge ingots. I thought it was going to be quick and easy. Apparently, all the ingots were picked up by Murlocs, so I figured I had way more than enough experience in this department. Only this wasn't the issue. Actually getting the item to drop was. I started running up and down the coastline pulling every Murloc I could find, clearing small camps and taking them out while swimming. Killing them again and again with no items dropping, I just continued moving on to the next one. At some point, it stopped feeling like a normal quest and started feeling like a grind. After a very long time, I finally got what I needed and never went back to that coast again. After finishing up the Lightforge quest, I wanted to follow up on some of my earlier quests that I didn't have a chance to do. One of them involved investigating a series of sunken ships off the coast. The moment I saw the words "cursed sailors" on my quest log, I knew this one was going to be fun. I grouped up with a few other adventurers, and together we made our way onto the ships and started taking out every enemy that we could find. We fought through cursed sailors and cursed marines while pushing deeper into the wreck. We finally found the captain on a completely different ship, and he put up a fight, but in the end, we brought him down and claimed the key to his chest. It's one of the best quests I've done in this zone. I love going through those ships and trying to figure out just what I needed to do next. After finishing up the ship quest, I joined up with a small group to take on some elite quests in the northern area of the zone. We made our way onto the field with lots of camps, all packed with enemies. We had to be very careful here because everything was packed so closely together. While killing off these elites, we finally found the boss. But unfortunately, he was in the middle of a camp. I knowingly rushed in first to pull the camp while the group focused the boss. Our plan was to take him out as soon as possible and hopefully survive the encounter. Unfortunately, I went down during the chaos, but it did give my group enough time to finish the fight. And after all that was said and done, the elite quests were finished, so we waved and said our goodbyes. After splitting up the group, I went out to look for the orc camps I have a quest for. While here, I met up with another adventurer and together we pushed through the area. We cleared small and large packs of orcs throughout the camps. The battle started to get chaotic as more and more enemies joined the fight. Luckily though, we were able to take them down rather quickly. By the time we finished, the area was mostly cleared, and I was off to turn in the quest. After turning in the orc quest, I was sent straight back out into the exact same area. This time, I had to burn catapults and take down the area boss. I carefully moved through the camp, lighting catapults while avoiding big groups of enemies. Upon making my way to the boss, I noticed he was surrounded by other mobs, so I did my best to pull them away from him. My first attempt failed very badly, and I got overwhelmed by the magic bolt that an orc shot at me. On the second run, I cleared out the area patiently and prepared for the boss. The fight was long and intense, but I managed to defeat him. I knew without the gear my guild gave me, I would never have been able to do this. While in Menethil Harbor, I decided to finish the missing diplomat quest that's been in my quest log forever. What I didn't plan for is to actually board the wrong boat. I ended up somewhere in Aberdeen. After correcting my mistake and taking the right boat, I tracked down the trader that was involved in the quest. The fight was harder than expected, but I managed to take him down. That's why I learned that the missing diplomat was actually the king of Stormwind. And Jaina, the ruler of the island, made her appearance. If only she and her crew had come a little bit earlier to actually help with the fight, that would have been really nice. After finishing up everything in Wetlands, I returned to Duskwood with Lightforge ingots. I could finally use the weapon meant for the boss. This boss was responsible for all the Worgen in the area, from what I could tell from the quest notes, so it was my duty to take him down firsthand and to free Duskwood from this infestation. However, my first attempt failed. When I equipped the weapon, it had a 30-second timer on it, so I couldn't actually hit the boss. So I died, just standing there, not being able to do anything. I'm thinking that Blizzard specifically meant for this to happen just to mess with people. On the second try, I used it correctly and finally put an end to the boss. That finally closed my time out in Duskwood. With no more quests that I was able to think of, I headed out to the next area, South Shore. After finishing up in Duskwood, my guild suggested that I headed towards South Shore. When I arrived there, I picked up every quest I could find in town. I actually liked this place a lot because it reminded me of Elwyn Forest. It was calm and green, and it had the same music that was in the starting area. Unfortunately, I couldn't enjoy the ambience for long because the quest sent me out towards the coast. And of course, it was for Murlocs. I ran up and down the shoreline, clearing camps and pulling groups non-stop, taking out all the Murlocs I could see, while accidentally going too far out the coast and killing a lot that weren't even for the quest. After making the long way back and turning in the quest, I thought I was finally done with Murlocs. Then as soon as I turned in the Murloc quest, I was sent right back out. This time, I had to collect their heads instead of just killing them. Blizzard never fails to send you right back out to do something that could have easily been grouped together. So with my group, we went up and cleared the coast again. Camp after camp went down as we pushed along the shoreline, gathering all the heads we could find. After finishing up with the Murlocs, I headed to the other side of the coast with my group. This time, the enemies were Naga. They were bigger, hit harder, and didn't go down very easily. We worked slowly and carefully, clearing everything that was required. Overall, this quest was way less time consuming than the Murloc quests. When I returned to South Shore, it was complete chaos. The town was currently being raided by horrid players. I ran for my life, headed for the end. Then I remembered. I was a warrior, a member of the Alliance, and we don't back down to orcs. So I walked back outside to face them. I walked up as everyone else was running away. This was my moment. Then, I was quickly overwhelmed and taken down in less than a second. But it was still a moment I will never forget. After the Horde made questing impossible in South Shore, I headed to Nomor again to join a dungeon group. Upon walking outside the city of Ironforge, I was reminded just how beautiful this zone really is. All the snowy peaks, the wind whirling in and out in the background, and the sound of that music. By far one of the best places I've been to. Inside the dungeon, everything felt mechanical and completely different from the outside world. We fought through bad gnomes, slimes, machines, and gnome-built enemies. Bosses like Vicious Fallout and the Crowd Pummeler hit much harder than I expected, and a super rare item dropped. The Mega Chopper. This thing was just screaming my name, but I couldn't get myself to need it, as my weapon was better, or else I thought it was. After finishing the dungeon, I stayed behind to help the healer run it again. He was upset he didn't get the loot he wanted, so this time, I stepped up and tanked the dungeon. I became responsible for pulling and controlling the fights, and let me tell you, it comes with a lot more responsibility than just being a DPS and pressing a button. On the second run, a rare healing orb dropped, and the healer instantly went crazy over it. Later, a Crowd Pummeler mace dropped. Apparently this thing never drops, and the druid was basically drooling over it. I compared my weapon to it, and still didn't need it. This sword is just really overpowered. Near the end of the dungeon, I went forward to pull a group of enemies. only to look back and see that my group must have been attacked by a patrol. So I made my way back up, popped my special abilities, and together we took them all down. I was very surprised that nobody died. We made our way to the final boss room and worked together to bring him down. He wasn't too hard, more just a cool looking enemy. Once he was down though, I was just happy to be done with this dungeon. I had been here way too long, and this dungeon is kinda confusing. Not to mention, I got lost twice. So with that, I said farewell and went back out to questing. Walking out of Nomer again, I didn't feel like the same warrior who walked in. I felt stronger, more confident, and more focused than what I was at the start of this journey. Every zone tested me, and every dungeon forced me to grow. I learned how to push forward when things got hard instead of backing away. I learned how to survive when I wanted to give up. I learned that failure wasn't the end, and it was part of becoming better. I'm still far from level 60, the road ahead is long, but now I know I'm built for it. And before I end this part of the journey, I want to give a real thank you to my guild, Top Soul. These people didn't have to help me, they didn't have to send me gear, they didn't have to show up when things got hard, but they did. And I wouldn't be here without them. You'll see their names floating on the screen, and every single one of them deserves all of that credit. This journey continues, and I'll see you all in the next episode. If you've been following this journey since the beginning, then you already know how crazy it's been so far. Back in episode 1, I started my journey off with being gifted a fiery dagger, dying to Goldtooth in the cave, and fighting Princess, the prize pig who hits harder than half the enemies in Elven Forest. After that, I made my way into West Fall, where I spent a good chunk of time learning how to properly pronounce Defias, while filling my bags with every item in the game just to make a stew. Episode 2 took things even further. I leveled through Red Ridge Mountains with the help of my guild, clearing camps, taking on castles, and actually starting to feel like a real warrior progressing in the game. Then came Nomer again, my first real big dungeon. I tanked the entire place, somehow kept everyone alive, and managed to unknowingly pass on some insane item drops that basically could have carried me for several levels. But now the journey starts to get a little bit messy. In this episode, we return to South Shore to track down wizards and chase an orc who's hiding out in a lake house that I didn't even know about until I was on the other side of the map. We headed into Stranglethorn Vale, home of tigers, trolls, angry pirates, and horrid players who seem to appear out of nowhere. We grind through dungeons like Scarlet Monastery, Razorfen Downs, and Oldman, anything to keep pushing forward through the low level 40s. And for the first time, we discovered Tanaris, where the bandits, pirates, and sandstorms all work together to ruin my day. There's frustration, progress, dungeon chaos, and a huge moment I've been waiting for since episode 1. But that surprise is staying hidden for now. So welcome to the next chapter of the Noob Experience. Let's jump right in. I started my journey back in South Shore, coming back here to finally finish the higher level quests I couldn't touch before. Last time I was under leveled, this time I wasn't. This time I was ready. On the road in, I even decided to try something new. To make a friend. To show the enemy team that not every alliance versus horde moment has to end in bloodshed. Something felt peaceful, like the perfect place to pick up where I left off. But of course, that calm never lasts long around here. While exploring outside of South Shore, I stumbled across this cool little town looking place. It had a cave with a glowing portal in the middle of it. At first I thought I found some hidden alliance area or quest hub. Then I got a little too close and realized it was a horde town. I went from cool discovery mode to running for my life. Out of nowhere, a horde player came sprinting out and took me down instantly. Maybe he didn't get the memo that I was a nice guy. After recovering from that encounter, I headed up into the hills to take on a couple quests involving the Syndicate. These guys looked a lot like the Defias, just with bright orange bandanas. Their camps were scattered across the hills, and clearing them out turned into a solid grind. Then, completely by chance, I walked past a table and noticed something I would have totally missed. It was a battle plan, just laid out on the table. Details like this make the world feel alive. It was so easy to walk past this, and luckily I caught it in time, because it adds a lot more depth to the actual story. After finishing up with the Syndicate, I moved on to the Ogres. My goal? Collect Knucklebones. It was a simple idea, but it was a lot harder than it looked. These ogres must have been hoarding these things like relics,
because fight after fight, nothing dropped.
I kept running back and forth across the camp, fighting, looting, fighting again,
For what felt like an hour. Eventually, after way more ogres than I'd like to admit, I finally got everything I needed. Back in South Shore, I turned in my quest and got sent right back out, this time to Alterac Mountains. My job was to track down the Syndicate leadership hiding in an old Alterac town. And honestly, the backstory here is really cool. Apparently, Alterac used to be a human settlement back in the day, but it was lost to the ogres during a war. Knowing this made the zone really cool, and every ruined house I walked by
felt like leftovers from a fallen kingdom. When I entered the abandoned town, things escalated pretty quickly. The Syndicate here were tougher, some literally hiding in the shadows. Every doorway felt like an ambush waiting to happen, but I kept moving forward one fight at a time. Then I made the mistake of running into a building and got rushed by a lot of enemies. No clean pull, just chaos. I instantly thought to myself, yep, I'm gonna die here. Then, mid-fight, I actually leveled up, so my health shot right back up to 100 and I was actually able to survive the fight. A little deeper in the town, I walked into a building and found a horde NPC named Goldier, just standing there. I have absolutely no idea who this guy was, and if he's part of a quest or something that I missed, I have no idea. Not long after that, I died again, but I ran back, fought through a few more enemies, and finally completed the quest. After everything, I made my way back to South Shore to turn in the quest. All that work, all those fights, and I expected the story to continue, but nope, nothing. Not a follow-up, no continuation, just silence. Luckily, another quest sent me to Ironforge where I actually found a follow-up quest, which was great, except I had zero desire to walk all the way back to South Shore again. With the quest sorted out, my guild told me to head to Deathless next. Easy plan, not so easy getting there. It took me half an hour just to reach the flight point. Thankfully, a guildmate showed up and showed me a secret cave that cut down travel time. Then, I had to walk through an entire zone just to reach Deathless. But once I got there, I didn't really like it that much. It was gray, empty, lifeless, truly desolate. So against my better judgment, and against everyone's advice, I chose to head for a place called Stranglethorn Vale. Heading into Stranglethorn Vale for the first time felt like stepping into a completely different world. The second I crossed into the zone, the music shifted through the trees, with a warm, mysterious jungle rhythm. It was awesome to experience this kind of atmosphere. The first stop was a rebel camp tucked in the northern area of the map. The people here were fighting against a Colonel Curzon. This dude apparently went evil and created an army inside the jungle. The camp immediately sent me out to start dealing with his forces and to collect some jungle remedies. The jungle remedies weren't hard to find, they dropped from the medicine men scattered along the forest edges, but what made them annoying was the fact that they fully healed themselves whenever they got low health, so it felt like I was fighting the same enemy twice. Then came the Curzon fighters. The quest wanted me to take out 15 of them, but they barely spawned and everyone else in the zone was looking for the same mob. After finally completing the quest, the camp sent me right back out, this time deeper into Curzon territory. My new objective was inside a cave packed with headshrinkers and commandos. These guys were higher level and the entire place was crowded with players fighting for the same mobs. Finding enemies wasn't the challenge. Finding ones that were alive was. The Curzon commandos blended in with the shadows, making them annoying to spot. I walked straight into them without even realizing it. And the headshrinkers? They shrunk me down to the size of a gnome. Seeing my character go from warrior to pocket-sized mid-fight was definitely a new experience. Between the higher levels, the crowd mobs, and the surprise attacks, finishing this part took way longer than expected, but eventually I got everything done. After clearing out the cave, I headed back to the rebel camp and turned everything in. The follow-up quest was to take down Colonel Curzon himself, but that quest was red and I had no intention of doing that at this point. Continuing down the road, I found a hunter's camp where each NPC gave me a quest to hunt tigers, raptors, and panthers. It was a nice break from the Curzon storyline, or so I thought. Once I set out to track down the tigers, the raptors, and the panthers, I realized that Stranglethorn Vale wasn't joking around. The jungle felt massive, dense, and alive, and not always in a peaceful way, because almost immediately I ran into Horde. They were everywhere. It was worse than South Shore. Still, I pushed deeper into the forest and found the animals I needed. Tigers everywhere, raptors lurking near ruins, panthers blending in with the background. It took a while to finally complete it. But once I hacked my way through everything the jungle threw at me, and hiding from every horde that I saw in sight, I finally completed the quest. Back at the hunter's camp turning in the quest, I noticed a fellow alliance player being attacked by horde players. And when you see another alliance member in trouble, you don't just walk away. You jump in and help. We fought hard together, and for a moment I felt like we could win, but eventually my ally went down, leaving me alone against the horde. I held on as long as I could, but in the end, I didn't survive either. Everything seemed calm, and after taking down one of the quest enemies, a horde player ambushed me when my health wasn't even at 100%. Even starting at a disadvantage, I fought back hard. It felt less like he was trying to gank me and more like an unexpected duel in the middle of the jungle. And against all odds, I actually took him down. But this was just one of many fights the horde had planned for me in Stranglethorn Vale. While exploring deeper in Stranglethorn, I found a cool road on the eastern side of the map. It looked ancient and I saw trolls guarding the front of it, which usually means horde territory. I got a little too close while checking it out and ended up sprinting through the jungle trying not to die. Next, I had to go where the panthers spawn at, because these guys were literally invisible. Once I found them, I cleared out the panthers and moved on to the raptor area. But the second I saw their levels, I knew I needed to wait before continuing that quest. Further south, I arrived at a place called Booty Bay, and this place instantly stood out. It was this cool little town filled with pirates on the edge of the coast. It was also the first town where both Alliance and Horde players could be together without fighting one another. Then came the quests. Not one, not two. It was like 10 quests filling up my log instantly. Booty Bay didn't just welcome me, it hired me full time. One Booty Bay quest sent me to deal with goblin geologists, a refreshing break from hunting every animal in the jungle. I had to take them out and collect a particular stone that they carried, which meant a lot of back and forth across their camp. Clearing goblins, waiting, clearing them again, but eventually I got all the stones I needed. Another quest sent me to hunt basilisks for special crystals they supposedly drop, and I say supposedly because it felt like none of them wanted to drop anything. While searching, I stumbled onto an island. Luckily, I had a quest to explore it, and after leaving the island, I gathered some herbs and searched for more basilisks. Then, completely by chance, I ran into the tiger boss of the area and managed to take him down. He was a named boss and I actually needed him for one of my quests, so I felt pretty lucky. That moment didn't last long though, because shortly after a horde player ganked me out of nowhere. Finding more basilisks took forever. I went through multiple different spawn zones just looking for them so I can complete the quest. After turning in the island quest, Classic WoW hit me with another peak quest design, sending me right back up to the same area again, all the way on the top of the map. This time I was actually heading onto the island, and it was covered with water elementals. It was raining at the same time and the whole experience felt really cinematic. While I was there, I was collecting the bracers that the elementals were carrying. While I completed that, something came to mind. Everyone, my guild, random players, comments, kept asking me the same thing. When are you going to start the warrior quest? So standing there, I decided, it's time. Time to start the warrior quest line. Time to take the next step and finally get the whirlwind axe. Little did I know how long of an experience this would actually turn out to be. To begin my warrior questline, I had to take a boat to Ratchet. Sounded simple enough until I stepped on board and realized the entire ship was filled with horde players. Naturally, I did what any brave warrior would do. I hid in the back of the ship. Unfortunately, the horde players found me almost immediately and decided it was time for me to die. My spirit sent me all the way back to Stranglethorn Vale, only for the game to teleport me right back onto the boat so I could get killed again by the horde players. My journey was off to a phenomenal start. Once I escaped the horde death trap, I swam to an island nearby. Thankfully, there wasn't a horde player in sight. What I did find was a group of warriors all gathering around at a fight pit. My task was straightforward. Enter the fighting pit and defeat wave after wave of warrior NPCs. I fought through multiple opponents and each one swinging non-stop, until the pit boss finally arrived. It was a long, drawn out process, and luckily I was higher level, which gave me the edge that I needed to win and complete the first trial. After the pit trial, I headed back towards South Shore, and followed the river north looking for a hidden troll hut. I got lost the first time but eventually found it. Once there, I spoke with a troll and he handed me what was essentially a massive grocery list of tasks. I needed to collect troll tusks, elemental charms, herbs. It was basically a scavenger hunt across half the eastern kingdoms. With that, I headed to Arathi Highlands and began gathering the elemental charms. Arathi's fire elementals were easily the hardest part of this grind. Each one of them hit like a mini boss and I needed 8 charms for each elemental type. So the process was pretty slow. In the middle of this grind, I was asked to go to Scarlet Monastery and of course I said yes. On my way there, I stumbled into a Dalaran NPC who was tied to the mysterious island quest from Stranglethorn Vale. A cool little quest I would completely missed out on. After completing the dungeon and wearing my new Scarlet Tabard, I returned to Arathi to finish collecting the elemental charms. With the fire charms done, I moved on to the thunder elementals, which were a complete relief, super easy compared to the fire ones. Then came the water elementals and these were no joke. They hit hard and pulling 2 at a time was guaranteed to kill me. I had to take my time, plan each pull, and play it carefully. After finally collecting all the charms I needed, I headed back to Stranglethorn Vale to gather the troll tusks, the final and deadliest requirement on the list. When I reached the troll camp entrance, I noticed a horrid mage waiting there. The moment we saw each other, we both knew what was about to happen. I charged in immediately, ready to open up with a strong hit, and slammed directly into his shield, doing absolutely no damage. I kept swinging but realized the real issue. I had no rage. Once I used Blood Rage, I could finally fight back. But the mage kept slowing me down non-stop and chunking away at my health bar. My health dropped so low that I had to drink a potion just to stay alive. At one point his shield finally broke, and with 2 or 3 solid hits he went down really quickly. It was a close duel, but I managed to come out alive. Inside the troll camps, I quickly learned that trolls don't travel alone. Every pull brought 2 or 3 at a time, and I ended up dying multiple times trying to gather the tusks. They were packed so tightly together that isolating a single troll was nearly impossible. After a lot of running back and forth, resetting, and near-death escapes, I finally gathered all the tusks I needed. On the way out, I saw a shadow of a rogue flicker across the beach. He opened up on me instantly, and I popped Blood Rage. We fought in a fast, brutal duel where both of our health bars dropped quickly, but I managed to win with just a sliver of health left. With all the ingredients collected, I returned to the troll hut for the final step: defeat a powerful elite elemental. I brought backup from my guild: Pepperports, I Made You Bleed, and Nodal, but quickly realized the boss was actually a lot easier than I thought it was. The elite boss went down really quickly, and I was awarded with the legendary Whirlwind Axe. It was a cinematic moment, made even better by sharing it with my guildmates. And just like that, my quest pointed me right back towards Stranglethorn Vale, because that jungle was far from done with me. After getting my Whirlwind Axe, I made my way back to Booty Bay to jump right into the next part of the journey. I grabbed a couple of quests on the way in, nothing too crazy, just enough to get moving again. One of them sent me out into the jungle to deal with some gorillas, all for the sake of scaring a guy back in town. Which sounded easy until reality slapped me in the face, because I had never, not once, used a two-handed axe before. So my weapon skill started at level 1. Meaning every swing I took was just me politely informing the gorilla that I was attacking it. Meanwhile, the gorilla was hitting me like it had been trading for this moment its entire life. I almost died multiple times just trying to level up the weapon skill enough to actually connect a hit. But eventually, after missing more swings than I'd like to admit, I got the hang of it and actually started hitting the gorillas. I spent some more time here leveling up my axe before I moved on to the next quest. After finally getting my attacks to land, I decided it was time to take on the fabled Bad Thera, the elite panther boss hiding out in the jungle. The fight was intense right from the start. Bad Thera hit fast, hard, and didn't give me a single moment to breathe. But with my new Whirlwind Axe, every hit I managed to land actually felt like it mattered. It was close, way closer than I expected, but somehow I held my ground long enough to bring her down. With the hunting quest done for the moment, I decided it was finally time to take out Colonel Curzon in his cave. The second I walked in, I realized the cave was basically a maze designed to test my patience. I fought my way through room after room only to discover I had gone all the way to the back of the wrong area, which meant I had to backtrack past all the enemies I had just barely cleared. Eventually, I found the right tunnel leading to Curzon himself. And of course, he wasn't alone. He had 2 guards standing right next to him. so I charged in, used my special abilities, and just hoped that would be enough. The fight was close, but somehow I managed to take down all 3 of them. This was a huge win, especially because I did it alone. After finishing off Curzon, my next quest sent me straight to Skull Splitter Troll territory. These trolls were nothing like the ones I fought during my warrior class quest. There were plenty of close calls when I accidentally pulled too many, but right in the middle of all that chaos, I finally hit level 40. That moment felt pretty huge. It wasn't dramatic or flashy, just a quiet realization that I made it this far. I am so genuinely happy and thankful that I'm able to play this game and to experience this class. On my way back to turning the troll quest, I ran into the raptor boss, Tethys. He was higher level, hit hard, and the fight was going downhill fast. Luckily another adventurer was nearby, and together we both took him down. I tried doing another quest right after this to go take on some goblins and try to get their crystals, but they absolutely destroyed me. That's why I learned that armor can break. I learned this because my character was walking around in nothing but a tabard. Once I hit level 40, everyone told me it was time for a mount, which sounded great until I was told that it cost about 100 gold. So I started making potions and selling everything that I could. I posted them all in the auction house, and then it was just a waiting game. While waiting for the auction house, I was asked to tank Razorfang Downs, and it was on another continent. The walk reminded me a lot of the Shadowfang Keep walk. It was long and quiet. This time, it was through the Southern Barrens. Inside the dungeon, we had to protect an NPC channeling into a really big statue. This happened for 3 minutes straight, all while we were taking on mobs of enemies. Further in, we found one of the coolest bosses I've seen so far. An undead standing on a pile of bones, playing an air guitar, with dancing skeletons all around him. I've never seen anything like it in this game. I thought it was super cool. For the final boss, the group that I was with just said to ignore all the ads, and that the boss would just keep summoning them anyways. So, I charged in and we all took down the boss together. When he died, apparently a really rare dagger dropped because everybody was going crazy over it. Back in Stranglethorn, I really wished I had a mount. Every quest had me running all over the zone. The goblins I needed crystals from were brutal, and every time I would pull one, at least another one would come in and I would just die. And this walk wasn't exactly close. When I finally finished that quest, I decided to go back to South Shore and finish some other quests. One of the last quests in South Shore involved me finding a wizard and a boss. The wizards were all very conveniently placed in the middle of camps, so I had to pull multiple enemies at a time. And I kept looking for this boss named Nagaz, only to learn that he's actually at a lake house on the other side of the map. At the lake house, there were invisible enemies all around. I had to be very careful not to pull too many as well as pull the boss at the same time. When I finally started attacking the boss, he hit really fast, but luckily he did like no damage, so it was very easy to actually kill him. When I went upstairs, I found a random human NPC, which I have no idea who she is or if I missed a quest somewhere, but it was a little bit confusing as to what's going on there. After turning in those quests, I hit level 41. I thought it would help in Stranglethorn Vale, but it didn't. I died a lot more. My next quest took me to a pirate area. Before I even reached the boat, I just saw my other party member running past me on their mount, while I was just slow. They even offered to send me gold for the mount, but I just declined. I wanted to earn it. After looking for all the bosses and all the ships, I was glad that I was in this group because every time I hit the boss, I barely did any damage. After completing all the bosses, I decided to do another dungeon. This one was called Old Man. Of course, on the way there, I was the last one because everybody else had a mount and they had to wait for me to walk there. Again, they offered me gold, which I politely declined. Once inside, the place looked amazing. It was like an old excavation site, and it just looked ancient. I loved everything about this dungeon, except that it was actually really confusing. And also, my group told me that whenever we got to the boss, that we would just hit the boss and then run up the stairs, which I didn't really understand why we were doing that, but I wasn't about to ask questions. So after that, we took him down, and then I decided to turn in all my quests and hopefully get another level. Back in Iron Forge, I turned in all my quests I got from that dungeon, and I got super close to level 43. So close that I thought the game was actually messing with me and not letting me actually hit the level. I also checked my mail to see if I had enough gold to get a mount yet, but I only had 74 gold at this point. So, out of quests that I can actually do, with no gold and no mount, I asked my guild what to do next, and they suggested Tanaris. Upon discovering Tanaris, I was greeted by a massive open desert, stretching out over the entire zone. It was a completely different change of scenery compared to what I've seen in the jungle. Right on the edge of that endless sand was a cool little goblin town called Gadget Sand. And just like Booty Bay, Horde players were casually hanging around too. Once inside the town, I grabbed every quest I could find, and there were a lot of them, which had me believe that I would get good experience here. To my dismay, I would sooner find out that wasn't the case. My first quest had me heading out into the desert to take down bandits scattered around the area. I traveled east across the dunes, fighting them as I went. After a few kills, I noticed another town off in the distance near the coast, and decided to check it out. At the coastal town, I picked up even more quests, most of them involving pirates along the shoreline. Before tackling those, I returned to the desert to finish clearing out the bandits. The more time I spent in Tanaris, the more I realized how cool this zone actually is. Every now and again, a full sandstorm would sweep across the entire area, and the visibility would drop really low. This whole zone just felt alive and constantly shifting. Once I finished off the bandits, I headed straight for the pirate camps along the coast. These pirates were no joke. They hit much harder than anything else in the zone so far, and they also were higher level than me. It didn't take long for me to realize I would be stuck here just like I was stuck in Stranglethorn Vale. One quest wanted me to recover stolen cargo. It seemed simple enough until I realized the building that I was in. It was upstairs in a building full of pirates. The moment I stepped through the doorway, 3 mobs jumped me at once. I put up a good fight but actually died in the end. I ran back all the way from the graveyard, which is not that short of a distance, tried my luck again, got maybe 20 feet further than the last time, and had another group of 3 enemies attack me. I died once again, and it was just a disaster. As if the pirates weren't bad enough, things got even worse. A Horde warlock appeared out of nowhere on the beach and just blasted me instantly. I had barely any time to actually take him down before he just nuked me. At that point, between the pirates, looking for a stolen crate, and now Horde everywhere, I was mentally checked out of the zone, so I decided to leave Tanaris for another day. But even while heading through Ratchet to catch the boat back to Booty Bay, an undead priest killed me on the dock. Definitely not my day. Back in Stranglethorn Vale, I decided it was time to finish off the elite quests that have been sitting in my log forever. One of my guild members happened to be on the same quest, so we grouped up and headed towards the King of the Jungle. When the tiger spawned, we charged straight in. The fight wasn't flashy, but it was really long. It was all about staying alive. My fellow guildmate had to stay along and heal me the entire time, while we both just chipped away at his health. This boss hit hard and he had a lot of health the whole time, but after about a minute of fighting him, he eventually went down. After killing the tiger, I made my way back to the mysterious island to finish the Stone of Tides. I swam out onto the ocean, dove deep until I reached the ritual spot. I had to click on this stone to summon the boss, all while elite murlocs were circling around me. Once I summoned the goblin, I took him all the way up to the surface because I didn't know if he would stun me or not, and I wasn't going to take any chances. Once we were at the surface, I took him down quickly, and it was less climactic than I thought it was going to be. With heading back to the hunter camp, I was finally made an official member of the group. After finishing up the hunter quest, I tried the Seaweed Naga quest again, and immediately died. I pulled one Naga, then another ran in from the side, and before I knew it, I was back at the graveyard. So I switched to the Booty Bay Dead Collection quest, but the moment I started pulling mobs for that one, more enemies joined in, and I ended up dying again. At this point, it felt like Tanaris and Stranglethorn teamed up specifically to stop me in my tracks. No matter what quest I picked, the result was the same. Another death. Since questing had turned into a total disaster, I decided to grind out dungeons. I signed up as a tank for Scarlet Monastery and instantly found a group. Each run took about 12 minutes and gave me steady experience. It was about 13% experience per run. After several Scarlet Monastery runs, I went back into Uldaman. This time I would tank. Uldaman took close to an hour to complete, and rewarded me with about 30% of my XP bar. As I continued running it, I started learning the layout, the boss locations, and quest objectives. Eventually, I was leading the entire group through the dungeon. On the very last run, the final boss gave us some trouble. All our damage was super low against it because it had super heavy resistances. And our healer ran out of mana. Luckily, another warrior and I got on the same page, and we started trading aggro throughout the fight, which seemed really cool to do. If anyone wants to do dungeons with me or quests with me, I'd be more than happy to. Just invite me to a group or whisper me. But just be aware with my name it has that special eye character. So make sure to hold Alt and 141 and then send me an invite. We'll play together. After leaving the dungeon and returning to town, I checked my mail to see if anything sold at the auction house. Instead, I found a letter from my friend Pepper Ports, a tailor inside my guild. She sent me a full set of shirts she crafted herself, all with different colors and styles, and I thought this was really cool as I can just walk around Stormwind wearing a shirt. With new shirts in my inventory and a bit more motivation, I decided to head back to Stranglethorn Vale and grind out the last level 44. I had been in Stranglethorn Vale for way too long, and it was very frustrating. I pushed through the last remaining quests I had skipped earlier, getting closer and closer to the finish line. With me being a little bit higher level now, I decided to return to the deck collection quest as well as the Naga Seaweed quest. This time I could finally hold my own. The pulls were a little bit better and the fights were manageable. And for once, I wasn't running away anymore. For the first time, I actually finished up both quests without dying. It felt like a huge win, like I was actually the level I was supposed to be for the zone. Turning in the quests pushed me right up to the edge of level 45. At this point, the game was teasing me. My experience bar was one tiny section away from level 45. So, I found a group taking down a massive sea giant and decided to join in. The fight was way tougher than I expected, and I ended up taking all the damage. Luckily though, my group was able to kill the boss, and I just had to run back to my body and pick up the loot. After turning in the quest, my experience bar barely moved. I thought for an elite quest I would get a lot more experience than that, but unfortunately I didn't. So I just walked outside Booty Bay and started killing random mobs until I finally hit level 45. Hitting level 45 felt like one of those moments where everything finally comes together. After all the deaths, the ganks from Horde players, the dungeon runs, and the random setbacks, it actually felt good to see a level pop up on my screen. And with that level, something I've been waiting for since the start finally became real. I could finally buy my first mount. So I made the long walk back through Elwyn Forest, heading toward Eastvale Logging Camp. It was surreal walking through the forest again, 45 levels later, on my way to pick up my very first horse. When I got there, I had 3 to choose from. I looked at each one of them for a little bit longer than I should have, but I ended up choosing the chestnut horse. Mounting up for the first time hit harder than I expected. 45 levels of running everywhere, 45 levels of long walks back to my body, 45 levels of slowly making progress, and now suddenly, I was moving at a pace that the game wanted me to be at 5 levels ago. And it felt great. Looking back on this chapter, it had everything. Frustration, progress, cool moments, and plenty of times where I had no idea what I was doing. But now, with level 45 behind me, and a mount finally unlocked, I'm ready to take on the next stretch of this adventure. So thank you for being here through the chaos, the small wins, and the long road leading to this moment. Next time, we're heading back to Tanaris, and this time, I'll be riding out of there instead of walking. I'll see you in the next chapter. If someone told me a few weeks ago that a noob like me would make it this far, I probably wouldn't have believed them. And honestly, every time I start to feel confident, the game finds a new way to remind me that I really shouldn't be. But somehow, through all of that, the journey keeps getting better. And episode 4 is where things really start to take shape. Stranglethorn Vale once again proved that when Horde players see you breathing, they take that personally. We also grabbed the Whirlwind Axe, which for the first time, made me feel like I wasn't just swinging at air. And reaching level 45, I finally had enough gold to buy my first mount, which made traveling around a lot easier. Now, we move into episode 4. We kick things off with escorting a mechanical chicken, a quest that somehow attracted every nearby creature, like it was hosting a special event, and when we finally completed the quest, it casually told me to go turn it in Booty Bay, on the other side of the world. From there, we took on the Mallet of Zul'Farrak, easily one of the highlights of this entire journey. Pushing through elites, powering up the Mallet at the top of a troll temple, and getting lost looking for an egg, all while trying not to die. And then came a moment that I'll definitely remember forever. In Zul'Farrak, something that extremely rare dropped, and I couldn't even believe it at the time, and I'll probably never see it again. Moments like this are what make this episode so fun to look back on. So with all that behind us, let's get into the actual adventure. And naturally, it starts off in one place that I'd rather not go back to. Tanaris. This chapter started with me in Tanaris. because apparently I left more unfinished quests than I realized. I began with the higher level bandits scattered throughout the desert, assassins, rogues, shadow mages, basically everyone who didn't like that I was in their desert. Most of them weren't too bad until I ran into the ones that turned invisible. You don't really know you're in trouble until a completely invisible mob shows up while you're already in a fight. After clearing out the bandits, my next stop was the one place in Tanaris I really didn't want to see again, the pirate area. If you watched the last episode, you know exactly why. This place absolutely destroyed me. I died here. A lot. Like enough times that the graveyard probably started reserving a permanent spot for me. But this time, things were different. I was higher level, had better gear, and honestly, I was tired of being bullied by desert pirates. So I pushed forward, taking on every pirate that stepped in my way. One by one, I carved a path toward that stolen cargo that I couldn't get to before. Once inside, I made my way up to the upper floor, carefully clearing rooms as I went, just waiting for something to go wrong. And then finally, after what felt like ages of being stuck on this quest, I reached the stolen shipment. With the stolen shipment finally secured, I stepped back outside, only to notice something unexpected waiting for me. Andre Firebeard. He had mobs all around him, so I backed up, planned out an approach, and decided there was only really one option left. Charge in and use every cooldown I had. The fight was chaotic. Pirates everywhere, Firebeard hitting me like a truck, me scrambling just to stay alive, but somehow I managed to survive. My cooldowns worked, my health stayed up, and Firebeard finally fell. This was a quest that I've been avoiding for way too long, and when I finally completed it, the entire pirate area was officially complete. As I made my way out, I noticed two ships off the coast. Massive, smoking silhouettes in the water. I have no idea if players are actually supposed to go out there, but it definitely looked cool and maybe it was hiding something. After turning in all the quests I had left in Tanaris, something became very clear. Everything in this zone now wanted me to be a higher level. So instead of sticking around and getting pummeled by enemies way above my level, I decided it was time to move on. My next destination? Veralis. Once I arrived at Featherman's stronghold, the change in scenery was immediate. Lush forests, ancient elven buildings, and a completely different atmosphere from the desert I just crawled out of. Naturally, I picked up every single quest I could find. If someone had a quest icon over their head, I was taking it. No questions asked. One of the quests sent me to explore some ancient ruins on the other side of the island. At first I thought this would be simple, but when I got there, I realized it wasn't. There were Naga everywhere. I had to fight my way through groups of them just to make it to the structure. And once I got there, I just clicked on it and quickly made my way back to town. After wrapping up the first part of the ruin quest, the follow-up was simple enough. Head back out and collect Naga scales. So I went back to the area that I just fought through and started taking down Naga one by one. This part was pretty straightforward. Just kill some enemies, take their scales, and then head back to town. Once I had all the scales, the next quest told me to take out their leader. This is when things got a little bit more dangerous. The Naga on the other island were a lot higher level, and I had to be really careful about how many I pulled at once. One wrong step, and I'll be swimming back here from the graveyard. I slowly pushed my way through, clearing a path until I finally reached the cave where the leader was hiding. Inside, I found the boss waiting for me, with 2 minions at his side. I went in fast, trying to burst him down before things got out of hand, but halfway through, everything started going wrong. I used Retaliate, which is one of my cooldowns, and what it does, it reflects attacks back at the enemies. But I didn't take into account that the 2 mobs were casters. So, with barely any health left, I popped a health potion and swung for my life. And somehow, I managed to finish the fight and take down the last enemy before dying. After turning in the quest, my next task was to search for a missing NPC somewhere off the coast, so I headed toward the shoreline, following the clues, and that's when I saw them. Huge giants. Massive. Towering figures just standing underwater. This was honestly terrifying, and I was not expecting to see something that large casually just hanging out beneath the waves. Once I recovered from that, I continued searching for the sunken boat I needed. And, after totally not googling where it was, I finally found it. Once I got to the sunken boat, I clicked on it and got the information I needed for the quest. Once I made it to the mainland, my next destination was a cave filled with Yeti. And honestly, this part was kind of peaceful. The cave was quiet, the enemies were manageable, and it felt like a simple grinded out quest, where I could just relax and go with the flow of things. After taking out enough Yeti, I happened to loot an item that started an escort quest, and right on cue, another adventurer nearby also needed the exact same quest. It was perfect timing. So, together we started escorting a little chicken through the wilderness. And of course, it wasn't going to be that easy. The first wave was a couple of Yeti, which we handled without much trouble. Then came the gorillas. And finally, a wave of gnolls. Between the two of us, we managed to protect the chicken through every attack and safely get it to its destination. And for our efforts, the quest rewarded us by telling us to go to Booty Bay, all the way on the other side of the world, just to claim our reward. While I was out in the wild, I came across two night elves overlooking a nearby encampment. They explained that the horde were capturing sprites and holding them inside cages throughout the camp. My job was to head down there, open the cages, and help the sprites escape while keeping them alive long enough for them to run away. This was easier said than done. The moment I opened the cage, Tauren enemies started rushing me from every direction, and I had to protect multiple different sprites at one time. It turned out to be a bit of a mess. Enemies spawning constantly, sprites running wherever they wanted, and basically the worst plan ever. But after scrambling through the camp and keeping enough sprites alive, I managed to finish the quest. The follow-up quest sent me right back into the encampment to take out a specific number of the Tauren. They were scattered everywhere, and it took time to track down the exact ones I needed. Then, because I learned nothing from previous mistakes, I decided to pull the whole group at once. In my head, I thought, yeah, I could probably handle this. But reality said otherwise. Within seconds, I was stunned, surrounded, slowed, hit from every angle, and the fight went downhill fast. But after running back, taking a breath, and actually pulling enemies one at a time like a normal person, I finally finished off the last Tauren and wrapped up the quest. My next quest was to search for evidence of the missing night elf from the earlier sunken boat quest. After clearing out the gnoll camp, I finally found the lost gear I needed to move the quest forward. But the follow-up sent me somewhere I wasn't prepared for. The Writhing Deep. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. As I approached the area, the entire landscape changed. Strange insect parts started sticking out of the ground, holes leading into who knows where. It didn't look that inviting. Inside was even worse. The tunnels were dark and maze-like, branching in different directions, and full of insect creatures waiting around every corner. I kept pushing deeper, working my way through each tunnel until I finally reached the back of the cave. There, I finally found the NPC I've been looking for. I broke him out, fought my way back to the tunnels, and once I was safe, I decided I was never coming back to this place again. After finally escaping the Writhing Deep, I made my way back to town and turned in every quest I had. And there were a lot of them at this point. I turned in quests at Feathermoon Stronghold, then took a boat to Darnassus to turn in even more, and then traveled all the way back for Tanaris, just to hand in the quests I had over there. It felt like a world tour of quest turn-ins. But after all that, after clearing entire camps, fighting bosses, escorting chickens, surviving the Writhing Deep, I still didn't level. At that point, it was clear I needed to do something bigger to push me over the edge. So I decided there was only one thing left to do: run a dungeon. And with me already being in Tanaris, the choice was obvious: Zul'Farrak. This place sits tucked away behind the desert, an ancient troll city hidden among the dune. As soon as I stepped inside, the atmosphere completely shifted. Massive stone structures, troll architecture, an entire community built right into the desert. It was unlike anything else in the zone. We started working our way through the place, fighting trolls left and right as we moved deeper into the heart of the city. Every group of enemies felt connected to something larger, like the whole zone was gearing up for a show of force. Eventually, we reached a huge temple structure towering over the rest of the area. On the top of the platform, we found a group of imprisoned NPC adventurers waiting to be freed. After taking out the jailer and grabbing his key, we released them and prepared for what was next. And that's when we saw it. A massive horde of trolls gathered at the bottom of the stairs. Easily 100 of them waiting for us. It was one of those moments where you take a deep breath and hope the healer had enough mana. We charged down the steps alongside the NPCs, fighting wave after wave of trolls as they swarmed the staircase. Slowly but surely, we carved our way through the crowd, thinning out the horde until only a handful remained. And after the last troll finally fell, we pushed deeper into the city, toward the chief. When the fight began, the chief hit hard and fast, but our group held strong and slowly brought him down. And that's when it happened, the rarest item that I've seen throughout this entire playthrough. Jang Thray's the Protector. This was a weapon with a 0.86% drop chance, less than 1%. I really wanted it too, since I normally tank, but unfortunately, I lost the roll. Maybe next time I'll get it, if it ever drops again. With Zul'Farrak finally cleared, I headed back toward town to wrap things up for the next day. I was expecting a calm walk back, but apparently a horde rogue had other plans. Out of nowhere, it came out of the shadows and ambushed me. We immediately went back and forth, stunning, dodging, using cooldowns, both of us dropping low over and over again. The fight was really close, and I genuinely thought I was going to die. But somehow with just a sliver of health left, I managed to win the fight and keep moving. Once I finally made it back to town, I turned in the last of my quests, and after everything I had done today, I finally leveled. With the next level completed, it was time to leave Tanaris until I came back at a higher level. And the next stop was the Hinterlands. As I walked into the Hinterlands, the very first thing that greeted me was this enormous stone statue of an eagle. It towered over the path, carved in the mountain itself. It was one of the coolest zone entrances I'd seen so far. Not long after that, I came across a group of dwarves. Apparently these ones aren't actually part of the Alliance. They're just independent dwarves doing independent dwarf business. They gave me a few quests to get started, take out some trolls causing trouble in the area, and search for their missing griffin. Pretty simple introduction to the zone, or so I thought. My first real task in the Hinterlands was to collect troll necklaces, which sounded simple enough at first, except they just refused to drop. I kept killing trolls over and over, and for a moment I genuinely wondered if I was even fighting the right enemies. Eventually though, the necklaces finally started to drop, and I could move on to the next part of the quest. One of the areas I needed to clear had a cage I had to check for the missing griffin, but the place was absolutely filled with trolls. And this is where things went downhill. I pulled one troll, then another, then one more, and before I knew it, half the camp was attacking me. There was a brief moment where I thought, yeah, maybe I can still survive this. I didn't. I died right in the center of the camp with trolls everywhere. After running back and clearing the area like a sane person, I finally found the last cage I needed, but the griffin wasn't there. From there, I was sent to deal with a completely different problem: oozes that had taken over parts of the dwarven territory. These things were tougher than regular enemies, they hit harder, took longer to kill, and they didn't take any bleed damage. All of them were packed inside this cave area, so I had to move carefully and pull one at a time to avoid getting overwhelmed. Slowly, I worked my way through the cave, took out all the oozes I needed, and wrapped up the quests in the area. Once everything was cleared, I headed back to Dwarven Town to turn it all in. After turning in the quest, I was given a follow-up quest that sent me to search a nearby temple for any trace of the missing griffin. It sounded simple enough, just check the area, look around, nothing too serious. But that assumption did not go well. When I arrived, there were elite trolls guarding the top of the temple. They were way stronger than the trolls I had been dealing with before. I ran past them and grabbed the objective real quick. The elites jumped me immediately, and I ended up sprinting down the temple steps with half the place chasing me. Somehow, I actually survived the encounter. While I was in the Hinterlands, I decided to work on a quest I've been holding on to from Stranglethorn Vale. It had me walking along the coastline and collecting bottles that had washed up ashore. It was a simple, quiet task, a nice change of pace compared to everything else I had been dealing with. I also had another quest in the same area that wanted me to take a picture of a turtle. I figured it would be quick, just take a photo and be done with it. But as soon as I took the picture, the turtle immediately became hostile and started chasing me. I genuinely wasn't expecting that. One moment it was minding its own business, and the next it was coming straight for me. Once I got some distance and finished collecting the bottles, I finished up both quests and continued on with the zone. With all the quests I could complete at this level, I didn't have much left else to do in the Hinterlands. So I decided it was a good time to head back to Feralis and pick up where I left off there. Back in Feralis, one of the quests I picked up was from a goblin trying to set up shop along the coastline. He needed a few supplies before he could actually open up for business, and of course, those supplies involved me finding elementals. My task was to take out the water elementals along the shore and collect their cores for him. The fights were tougher than I expected. Water elementals don't take bleed damage, which meant a lot of my usual abilities didn't work the way they normally do. Every fight dragged on longer than it should have, move a little farther up the coast, and immediately run into another one waiting for me. It felt like the entire shoreline had teamed up just to slow me down. Still, I kept pushing forward, taking out each elemental one by one, carefully watching my health and trying not to get caught in multiple fights at once. After a long stretch of working my way up and down the coast, I finally collected all the elemental cores the goblin needed. On top of dealing with water elementals, the goblin also needed help clearing out elite giants that were wandering around the coastline. These giants were way too strong to handle on my own, but thankfully the goblin had a solution. He gave me an item that would shrink the giants down to my size, making them much more manageable to fight. Once I figured out how the device worked, everything became a lot easier. I went through the area taking down the now miniature giants one by one, clearing the entire stretch of coast without any major issues. After clearing out the elementals and the giants, I returned to the goblin and turned in both quests. Up until this point, he didn't have a shop or anything to offer, but once I handed everything in, something actually changed. The goblin finally opened his shop and became a vendor. It was a small detail, but really cool one. It made the work I did in the area feel like it actually had an impact on the world around me. With the coastline cleared, my next task sent me deeper into the northern part of Feralis to deal with a group of higher level yetis. They were all tucked away inside a cave, but this cave immediately stood out from the others I'd been to before. There were bookshelves, tables, and all kinds of objects scattered around, as if the yeti were actually living there instead of just wandering through. There was also this strange purple smoke drifting along the floor, and at the very back of the cave, a glowing glyph circle etched into the ground. I had no idea what these yeti were up to, but whatever it was, it didn't look friendly. Still, I pushed my way through the cave and took out every yeti I needed for the quest. Once the cave was cleared and the quest was complete, I moved on to the next part of the zone. Not long after leaving the yeti cave, I came across a massive stone giant who asked for help finding his friend who had gone missing nearby. Conveniently, I had a quest in the same area, so it worked out perfectly to handle them both at once. The second quest had me collecting strange gems from fires scattered around a harpy-infested ruined temple. The place was crawling with them, perched on broken walls, circling above, and ready to jump me the moment I got too close to one of the fires. Each gem was hidden in a different part of the ruins, which meant weaving through groups of harpies and clearing out pockets of them before I could safely grab anything. One gem in particular gave me way more trouble than it should have. It was up on a ledge, and I kept having to jump from one broken piece of stone to another just to reach it. I missed the jump a couple of times before I finally landed it. Once I had all the gems, I was able to use the staff I picked up earlier and perform the spell. As soon as I activated it, there was a hidden compartment in this temple structure in the middle of the zone, and when I clicked on the structure, I leveled up to level 48 and got a cool quest reward. With all that done, all I had to do was track down the giant's friend. Once I tracked her down, she explained that she tends to wander off on her own, and to keep her focused, I needed to ring a bell whenever she drifted too far away. This was definitely different from a normal escort quest. So we set off together, making our way back through the forest. Along the way, I had to fight groups of enemies while also keeping an eye on the night elf, because every so often, she would just head off in her own direction. Whenever she did, I had to ring the bell to pull her attention back so she continued following me. After dealing with the harpies, the night elf wandering around, and a few close calls, I finally got her safely back to the giant and completed the escort. With all the quests completed in the area, I turned in everything I left and wrapped up my time in Feralis. From there, I headed back to Stormwind to take on a much needed break from questing. I spent some time catching up on alchemy and cooking since both were starting to fall behind and needed a bit of attention. It was nice being in the city again, just a chance to breathe and reset for a moment. Once I had my professions caught up, it was time to start thinking about the next step in my journey. Next stop, actually finishing out Tanaris. To start off my time in Tanaris, I queued up as a tank to finish the last of the Zul'Farrak quests I hadn't completed before. I found a group almost instantly, and right away, I could tell these players were hilarious. The energy was just good from the beginning. We cleared our way through the dungeon, boss after boss, packs of trolls, lizards, everything Zul'Farrak could throw at us. Eventually, we made it up to the temple, the one with the prisoners on top. Once the fight began, the horde of trolls at the bottom came rushing in just like before. And of course, I accidentally died in the middle of the fight. But instead of getting upset, the group immediately started shouting things like "hold the line" and throwing out random battle cries in chat. Moments like this remind me what this game is really about. People having fun together, not just grinding from point A to point B. I genuinely enjoyed running with that group. They made the entire dungeon feel better, and honestly, I hope I run into more players like them as I keep leveling. After finishing up the dungeon, I literally traveled all around the world, turning in the leftover quests tied to the dungeon. Netherguard Keep, Dustwall Marsh, the Shimmering Flats. Everywhere I could think of where a straight quest turn-in might be hiding, I went there. And after visiting all those places, I still didn't level. I was so close to 49, just a sliver away but not quite there. So, I decided to run another dungeon just to push myself a little over the edge. And finally, after everything, I hit level 49. With that done, it was time to head back to the wasteland of Tanaris and finish the last of the zone's quests. One of the first quests I picked up in Tanaris sent me out to deal with some insects scattered around the desert. What I didn't expect was just how unsettling the area would look. The entire stretch of land was covered in insect parts. legs and shells sticking out of the ground like the desert itself had grown them. It was a little gross, and the bugs themselves hit surprisingly hard. Whenever I killed one, it would sometimes spawn smaller bugs that hit harder than they should have. Still, I fought my way through them, gathered the insect parts needed for the research, and eventually completed the quest. While I was out questing Tanaris, I couldn't stop thinking about the Mallet of Zul'Farrak. It wasn't part of any questline, there was no NPC hinting at it, and the game never pointed you toward it at all. Players had to figure out how to get it entirely on their own, which made it feel way more mysterious and way cooler than a normal item. I decided I needed it in my inventory. So I asked my guild for help, and right away people chimed in with advice and offers to come along. With that, the plan was set. I was going to get this mallet. Not long after asking for help, I was greeted by my friend Sargi, another YouTuber in the guild who offered to team up with me. Together we headed towards Hinterlands, where the base version of the Zul'Farrak mallet is hidden. It's actually really cool when you think about it. An item needed for a dungeon on one continent is found deep inside another troll area on a completely different continent. It makes the world feel connected, like the different troll tribes actually knew each other and passed things down between them. Once we arrived in the Hinterlands, it wasn't just about the mallet anymore. I also had the Griffin quest and another quest that required me to track down an ancient egg. So, with 3 major objectives, find the Griffin, find the egg, and get the mallet, we both headed straight toward the elite troll temple. As we made our way towards the troll temple, something felt strangely familiar. Then it hit me. I had already been here. This was the same exact area where I ran for my life from the elites without realizing it was tied to the mallet at all. Back then, I was just trying not to die. Now I was here on purpose. Sargi and I pulled the enemies we needed and managed to take them down, giving me the base version of the mallet. But of course, the mallet wasn't ready yet. It needed to be infused with special power, and to do that, we had to climb all the way to the top of the temple. Eventually, we made it to the top where the altar was waiting for us. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, finally powering up the mallet. I clicked on the altar and watched it transform into the true mallet of Zul'Farrak. It felt awesome to finally hold the completed version. After infusing the mallet, we went straight into the cave behind the altar, assuming the ancient egg must be in there. We fought through some trolls and explored deeper, but the cave kept branching all over the place. We weren't sure we were going the right way, so eventually we just backed out to look elsewhere. While checking the outside area, we found the griffin cage, totally unguarded. I freed the griffin, and its parents immediately swooped in and flew away together. After that moment, we went back to searching for the egg, and realized the truth. The cave behind the altar was the correct cave all along. We just hadn't explored far enough inside, so we went back to the cave and explored deeper this time. At the very end, we found the ancient egg guarded by a boss with 2 mobs. We couldn't fight all 3 at once, so Sargi sent in his pet and I sprinted for the egg. Everything aggroed and we both ran for our lives. It wasn't clean, but it worked. With all that finished, I said goodbye to Sargi and returned to Tanaris. While exploring the bottom of the map, I found massive floating pillars just hanging out in the air. And behind them, an entire zone just sitting under Tanaris. It was a really cool moment and just shows how much work the developers put into the game with tying each zone together. It was a really cool find while just exploring around in the desert. Next, I had a quest to take out thistle shrub enemies scattered across the bottom of the zone. I also needed dew from enemies in the same area, something players said that could take a while. So I expected the worst. But I got the dew almost instantly after only taking on a few of them. I felt pretty lucky at this point, and all I had to do was finish up the other quests while I was here. And just like that, I was done. Unfortunately, one of my quests sent me into another insect cave, even bigger than before. The ground was cracked open everywhere with tunnels dropping into the earth. My task was to find a missing NPC inside. At the entrance, I pulled 2 mobs on accident and died almost instantly. The graveyard was on the opposite side of the zone, so I had the pleasure of walking 5 minutes back. Yeah, it took that long just to get back to my body. When I finally made it back, the cave turned into a maze. Tunnels branching into other tunnels, looping endlessly, like the developers made it confusing on purpose. Eventually, I reached the end and found the NPC, which turned out to be a machine. I grabbed it and tried to leave but died right away, which honestly worked out in my favor because I respawned right next to town. After turning everything in, I ran Zul'Farrak one last time to make the final push to level 50. At this point, I knew every mob, every patrol, and every spot where things could go wrong. We cleared through the familiar opening and took down the lizard boss, Then we freed the prisoners of the temple and prepared for the troll horde. Trolls poured in from every direction, wave after wave, and right in the middle of the chaos, I finally hit level 50. It felt amazing to reach such a big milestone, and it's still taking some getting used to see a 5-0 on my name. After that, we took out the chief, then used my newly infused Mallet of Zul'Farrak to summon the secret boss. And with that, my goal was finally complete. Hitting level 50 felt different. It wasn't just another ding. It was a moment that made me look back at everything it took to reach this point. Running across continents, turning in leftover quests, diving into caves full of insects, tracking down a mallet hidden halfway across the world. Every one of those moments added up to this milestone. So standing in the middle of Zul'Farrak, trolls everywhere, complete chaos unfolding, that little golden flash meant something. It reminded me why I started this journey. Not just the level, but to see how far I could push myself through every zone, every setback, and every challenge the game throws at me. And now that level 50 is finally behind me, things feel different. The world feels bigger, the challenges ahead feel heavier, and every step from here takes me closer to level 60, and the end of this leveling journey. So thank you all for being here through it. The victories, the deaths, the dungeons, and the moments I didn't think I'd pull through, but somehow did. I'm excited for what comes next, and I hope you'll keep going with me, one level at a time. I'll see you in the next episode. This is it, the final stretch of my classic leveling journey. When I started this series, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just wanted to experience World of Warcraft the way it existed before I understood it, learning everything as I went. Over the next hour, we're going from level 50 to level 60, and then stepping into the part of the game everyone says is where the game really begins. Endgame content, raiding, and seeing just how far this journey actually takes me. Chapter 1 begins in the late game zones where progress slows down, enemies hit harder, and every mistake matters a little bit more. From there, the focus shifts away from pure questing and into dungeons, where leveling starts to turn into preparation for raiding. Chapter 2 is the final push, attunements, endgame dungeons, and the realization that level 60 isn't the finish line, it's the transition. And then in Chapter 3, I do what I told myself I need to do to really complete this journey. I need to step into raiding as an off-tank. Not to just be present, but to take on the role I set out to play. So whether you've been here since Elwyn Forest, or you're just joining now, this is where everything comes together. Let's finish this. I headed toward a place called Searing Gorge without really thinking about how I was supposed to get there. That immediately turned into me getting lost and accidentally passing through Burning Steeps first. Everything was on fire, the sky was darker, and it felt like I crossed into a much more dangerous part of the world. Eventually, I found a statue pointing toward a mountain and realized the path didn't go around it. It went straight through it. Once inside, I just stopped for a second. Massive chains, dwarves holding up entire structures over lava. It was easily one of the coolest places I've been to so far. It also felt like the kind of place where you really didn't want to slip. Finding the quest hub took way longer than it should have, but once I did, I was handed a full stack of quests. One NPC always turned his entire body to face you whenever you talked to him. Another always seemed sick or injured, and every quest came with a new excuse for why he couldn't do it himself, which somehow made it my problem. Most of the quests had been clearing the entire zone. Dwarves, spiders, and a lot of golems. The golems were the worst. Heavy armor, no bleed damage, every fight dragged on longer than it should have. At one point, I pulled more than I meant to and thought I could recover. My health just started dropping. And once it started going down, it never really stopped. At first I thought the zone was pretty small, but going underground made it clear just how wrong I was. Underneath the actual ground of the zone is an entire zone itself. Earlier, I picked up a quest to kill an elite leader and with full warrior confidence, decided to try and solo him. That confidence didn't last long. The boss had a lot of guards around him and the fight immediately spiraled out of control, and after a few seconds, I was dead. And I kind of realized this wasn't even possible. And after that, I grouped up. Even with 4 of us, the fight wasn't easy. but we pulled it together and got the kill. It finally made sense why trying to solo it earlier hadn't worked at all. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I picked up a key to an outhouse. When I finally got to the outhouse, a dwarf burst out of it and just ran away. And somehow, I still had a quest from him while standing inside the outhouse. I just kinda stopped asking questions at this point. After finishing up the last of the quests, I noticed I was close to leveling. So, I picked out a nice looking spot with a good background and decided to fight an enemy and just let the camera roll. And just like that, I forgot to record it. So there's no proof I hit level 51, but you can just take my word for it. After wrapping things up in Searing Gorge, my next stop was the Blasted Lands. This place immediately felt important, and that's because it is. It's where the Dark Portal was located. Although, it doesn't really look the way you'd expect. It doesn't have the same glow effect that it does on the character selection screen. When I got there, I was surprised by how few quests there actually were. Most of them came from 2 Blood Elf looking NPCs who sent me out to kill boars, hyenas, scorpions, and vultures scattered across the zone. Looking back on it now, this was the absolute worst decision of my entire leveling journey. I should have just skipped this entire process and done a dungeon. I'd already heard about how bad questing is in the Blasted Lands, but at this point I was already here, so I figured I might as well try it out for myself. That's when I decided to start a timer, because apparently nothing drops here, and I wanted proof. The first few enemies I killed didn't drop anything, and neither did the next few. Before I knew it, I was running full laps across the zone, checking spawn points and doubling back just to see if anything had finally respawned. Most of the time, I'd get there just in time to watch something else die in front of me. At that point, it stopped feeling like questing and started feeling like I was just patrolling the map. The Blastlands was absolutely packed. It wasn't just Alliance players doing the same quests. There were also max level characters farming items for raiding. Even when something finally spawned, there was almost always somebody already on top of it. And by the time I'd get there, it would just be a little bit too late. On top of that, the zone was crawling with Horde, which just made the zone that much more dangerous. Because I wasn't max level, I was an easy target. I was getting ganked constantly while trying to make progress for the quests. Sometimes in the middle of a fight, other times just running up to mobs, and more than once I was getting camped at the graveyard. No matter how carefully I tried to move through the area, it was just unavoidable. There were long stretches where I'd run my entire loop and find everything already dead. But slowly, the quest progress started to move. After killing what felt like hundreds of enemies, I was finally getting close to finishing. Around that time, my guild showed up just to help me with PvP, and the entire situation immediately started to feel different. Once my guild was there, I wasn't trying just to survive anymore. Instead of constantly being hunted, we started hunting down the Horde players instead, including a shaman druid who had been attacking me for hours. Once the quests were finally finished, I made a decision right there. I was leaving the Blasted Lands. After everything that had happened, I had no intention of ever coming back here. I needed a break from questing, and I knew exactly where to get one. Next step, tanking Moradin. After the Blasted Lands, stepping into Moradin felt like exactly what I needed. It was a brand new dungeon for me, and more importantly, it was a break from questing. I signed up as a tank, knowing full well this was my first time here. And I made sure to tell the group right away. Instead of getting annoyed, they were actually really helpful and walked me through what not to do. Apparently, there are these slimes in the dungeon that will kill you on contact, which is information I was happy to hear about before finding out the hard way. We hadn't been in the dungeon very long before something completely unexpected happened. While we were clearing out a part of the dungeon, an epic ring dropped, and seeing that purple text pop up immediately caught my attention. This was the first epic item I had seen drop in the entire leveling journey, so it felt like a pretty big moment for me. What made it even better was realizing that it was actually a tank ring, which meant it wasn't just rare, it was useful. As we moved deeper into Moradin, the dungeon started to feel bigger, and more chaotic the further we went in. We worked our way through several bosses along the way. Started with Noxion, a green elemental that kept spawning extra mobs and forced us to slow things down. After that came Razorlash, who was basically a giant weed, and by the time we reached Lord Viletongue, things got noticeably more stressful, with stealth mobs slipping into the fight and slowly jumping people in the back line. And then, another epic item dropped. This time, it was the Icemail Jerkin, and seeing a second purple drop in the same dungeon generally didn't feel real. 2 epic items in a single run was something I never expected to happen. After clearing our way through the rest of the dungeon, the path finally opened up into the final area. The whole space felt completely different from everything before it, with waterfalls pouring down over the cliffs, and the room opening up into something that actually felt calm for once. That didn't last long though, because Princess was waiting for us, the final boss of the dungeon. She had a ring that is considered pre-biz for me going into raiding, so I was definitely excited for this fight. The fight itself went smoothly, and once she finally went down, we all paused for that split second to see what her loot table was. Unfortunately, the ring didn't drop. With the dungeon finally finished, it felt good to step back into the world with a clear head again. After marauding, I decided to make my way to Felwood. Just getting there felt like a commitment on its own, with the long run up from Ashen Vale before I even reached the zone. Once I finally crossed into Felwood, almost immediately got ganked by a level 60 rogue. After the long run back to my body, I finally managed to get myself situated and pick up the quests in the area. A lot of them pointed me toward the deadwood enemies nearby, which also happened to be tied to the Timbermaw reputation. Unfortunately, that also meant that I wasn't the only one there. Just about every other player in the zone seemed to be farming the same enemies. Instead of trying to fight through it alone, I decided to group up with another adventurer who was in the same situation. It immediately made things feel more manageable. And for the first time since entering Felwood, it felt like things might actually be going smoothly. Together we worked our way through the deadwood enemies, slowly clearing camps and watching respawns as they come up. Having someone else there made the grind feel a lot more manageable, and for once the progress didn't feel like it was completely stalling out. Then, completely out of nowhere, another epic item dropped. It turned out to be the Warden's Staff, which would be a really cool weapon for a druid. I didn't end up getting it, but at that point it didn't really matter. The fact that another epic had dropped just felt crazy. While I was still working through the zone, I kept hearing people talk about another player who was going around killing just about every alliance they ran into. I didn't think much of it at first until suddenly, I ran straight into him. Almost instantly, my screen filled up with damage over time effects, and a few seconds later I was dead. I didn't even get a chance to react before it was over. From what I could tell, this was what people referred to as botting. I still don't fully understand how it works, but seeing multiple characters moving together and reacting the same way is pretty obvious that something's not normal. After making a bit more progress in Felwood, I picked up a few quests that led me into a place called Shadow Hold. I wasn't expecting much at first, but once I stepped inside, it quickly became clear that this was basically a dungeon disguised as a cave. The tunnel went on far longer than I expected, with tightly packed enemies and very little room to move around. This was also where I needed to complete an escort quest, so I reached out to my guildmate Nodal for some help before pushing up deeper. Together we fought our way through the tunnel, carefully clearing everything in our path, only to realize the escort wasn't there. After a quick search on Google, I realized that the escort was actually at the beginning of the entrance. So we made our way all the way back. Once we finally started the escort, we had to slowly follow a night elf as she wandered around looking for armor, all while fighting off enemies along the way. When she finally found it, she did this awkward little twirl thing that signaled that she grabbed her gear, and watching that just made it feel worth it. From there, we escorted her back out of the tunnel and took down an elite enemy at the end, who turned out to be her former partner. With that finished, it finally felt like my time in Felwood was wrapped up. Between the PvP, the grouping, the ganking, the dungeon-like quests, and the unexpected epic drops, Chapter 1 ended on a much better note than it started. With Felwood behind me, it was time to look ahead to the final stretch of the journey. With level 60 getting closer, it finally felt like it was time to stop leveling and start preparing for what was to come after. That meant attunements, and the first big one that I had to take out was Onyxia. The journey for that attunement started in Blackrock Depths, a dungeon I'd heard about but never experienced for myself. Luckily, my guild was more than willing to help, and before I knew it, we had a group together and were heading inside. Inside Blackrock Depths, I finally met Marshal Windsor. He had been captured by the Dark Iron Dwarves and was being held prisoner deep inside the dungeon. While he was locked away, he had lost some evidence that he was carrying that was proof tied to Onyxia and what was really going on behind the scenes. Getting that evidence back was the only way to move the attunement forward. So, as we worked our way through the dungeon, I had to keep an eye out for a specific note, one of the pieces of proof that Windsor needed. That meant clearing bosses and pushing deeper in the dungeon and waiting till I could finally pick up the item. After pushing deeper in Blackrock depths and taking down more bosses, we finally managed to gather the last of the evidence that Marshal Windsor needed. Once everything was turned in, it felt like the dungeon shifted from a normal run into something much more important. Marshal Windsor gathered his strength, and that's when the next part of the attunement began, the jailbreak. Instead of just clearing enemies, the focus suddenly shifted towards keeping him alive while we moved through the prison cell by cell. From there, the run turned into a slow, deliberate push through the prison. We moved forward freeing Windsor's friends and fighting our way through the dungeon while looking for his pieces of gear. Once he finally got everything back, the tone shifted again. Now it wasn't just about clearing anymore, it was about getting him out alive. We did the full roleplay walk through the dungeon, escorting him step by step and letting the moment breathe instead of rushing it. When we finally made it out, Windsor told me to meet him at Stormwind to continue the quest chain. But before that, there was still one more thing I had to do. It was time to finish Blackrock Depths. To reach the final boss of Blackrock Depths, we had to make our way into one of the deepest parts of the dungeon. That meant tracking down flame bearers and lighting torches around a room to unlock the boss chamber. The problem was that the entire area was packed with enemies. Slowly, we gathered the torches and we made our way into the boss room. On the other end of the boss room was the Emperor, the Dark Iron King. He was holding the Princess of Ironforge captive. As a group, we worked through the fight carefully, managing everything that was going on and slowly wearing him down. When he finally went down, it felt like the end of something we've been building toward for the entire run. Then, the loot window popped up, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The Hand of Justice dropped. From everything I've heard, this item almost never drops, and it's an item that every warrior wants. Getting it on my very first run of Blackrock Depths was completely unreal. On top of that, turning in the quests from the dungeon gave me a huge experience boost. Between the kills and the quest turn-ins, I hit level 57 and made solid progress towards the next level as well. After wrapping up in Blackrock Depths, it was time to move on into Eastern Plaguelands. This place was completely different from the fiery zones I've been in for most of the late levels, and I immediately liked the atmosphere. The land was covered with undead, ruined buildings, and this constant sense that something had gone very wrong here. My first stop was Chillwind Camp, where I picked up a handful of quests, pointing me straight toward the undead spread across the area. One of the first places the quest sent me to was Sorrow Hill, where I was tasked with taking out ghouls roaming the area. The fight itself wasn't too bad, but like a lot of places at this level, I wasn't the only one there. Progress slowed a little bit with other players competing for the same enemies, which made the area feel more crowded than expected. At some point during all of this, I noticed a strange gnome standing on top of a tree, and I still don't know what she was doing there. After turning those quests in, I was sent deeper into the zone toward Anderhall, a ruined settlement completely overrun by the undead. The objective sounded simple: move through the area and set the towers on fire. What I didn't realize at first was that each of these towers was guarded by an elite enemy. I found that out the hard way after running in too confidently and having to retreat almost immediately. Once I knew what I was dealing with, I slowed down. I carefully worked my way back in, lighting each tower while avoiding the elites inside, and making sure that I didn't pull more than I could handle. After that, the quest pushed me toward a nearby field that was corrupting the land. Taking down the enemy there and collecting samples felt like a small win, but also a reminder of just how dangerous this zone really was. After finishing up in the Eastern Plaguelands, my guild started putting together a run for Stratholme. This was a dungeon I heard about constantly, and stepping into it felt different from anything I've done before. Stratholme wasn't just another dungeon. It was one of the final dungeons in the game, and being in here made me finally realize that I'm doing endgame content now. As we pushed inside, it really started to feel like Leveling Journey was nearing its end. Inside Stratholme, we fought our way through the streets packed with undead, slowly clearing the way through the city. Every pull felt deliberate, and it was clear that this place was a place you couldn't rush. If you mispulled something, it could probably wipe the route. Then, partway through the dungeon, something completely unexpected happened. We ran into the Scarlet Crusade. I honestly thought I was done with these guys back in Scarlet Monastery, so seeing them here caught me off guard. After pushing through the last of the Scarlet Crusade, we made our way down to the hallway to find where their leader was hiding. The final fight on this side of the dungeon was against the Grand Crusader. At first, the fight felt like any other Scarlet Crusade encounter I'd seen before. Nothing about it seemed out of place or unusual. That changed the moment that the boss went down. Instead of dying, the boss actually turned into a demon. Seeing that happen completely reframed everything the Scarlet Crusade stood for in my mind. If their leader had been a demon the entire time, it raised a lot of questions about what they were fighting for, and who had been pulling the strings all along. With level 59 behind me, I decided to focus on finishing my attunements before pushing the rest of the way to 60. One of the biggest attunements I still had to work on was Onyxia, which meant it was finally time to continue Marshal Windsor's quest in Stormwind. I'd seen this quest play out plenty of times throughout my journey, usually while watching other players escort Windsor through the city. This time though, it was my turn to actually do it, and I was ready to see it through. With a few guild members alongside me, I roleplayed my way into the Stormwind throne room to begin the next part of the quest. This was one of those moments I'd seen plenty of times before, and thought I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. That confidence didn't last long though. Almost immediately, I made the worst mistake possible, and I ended up attacking the enemies in the room. The result was instant. Every enemy decided to target me, and I was dead in seconds. What I didn't realize at the time is that you're not supposed to fight anything there. The moment you do, you become the target. And that meant one thing: a long walk back to try it all again. After making the long walk back to the throne room, I tried the quest again. This time, I didn't touch anything I wasn't supposed to. Letting the event play out properly made all the difference, and before long, I was able to complete the escort and move the quest forward. At this point, it finally felt like the Onyxia attunement was really coming together. The next step meant heading into Upper Blackrock Spire, which I knew was more than just a normal dungeon. It was time for what was basically a mini raid. With the Dragonite quest in hand, my guild helped put together a group for Upper Blackrock Spire. We filled the group up pretty quickly and made our way inside. As we worked our way through the dungeon, everything felt smoothly at first. The pulls were controlled, the fights felt manageable, and it started to feel like we were going at a really good rhythm. But that didn't last long. At one point we weren't careful enough and ended up getting knocked back into a group of dragon eggs. Within seconds, the room filled with dragon whelps. There were way too many to control, and just like that, the entire group was wiped out. After regrouping and pushing deeper into Upper Blackrock Spire, we eventually made it to the final boss. This fight felt very different from everything leading up to it, with more going on at once and much less room for error. The plan was to manage the adds while keeping the boss under control and guiding him around the room, and once everything was set, the fight actually went smoothly. When he finally went down, it felt like a big step forward in the attunement process. But that feeling didn't last very long. Almost immediately, I realized I had made a pretty big mistake. The Dragonite quest I was actually on required me to visit Winterspring first, which meant I just completed Upper Blackrock Spire one step too early. After taking a break from the attunement quest, I decided to try and finish out my leveling journey, so I decided to go Stratholme again. Instead of heading back through the living side, we went to the undead side of the dungeon. Running Stratholme again at this point felt different. I wasn't just there for the experience anymore. I was there for the final pieces I'd be taking with me into raiding. At the end of the run was Baron Rivendare, a boss I'd heard about long before ever setting foot in Stratholme. He's known for dropping a rare mount, and even though I wasn't expecting to see it, there's always that moment where you just can't help but hope. The mount didn't drop, but something else did. A plate helmet with 2% hit, which immediately stood out as something I'd be taking straight into raiding. With level 60 finally in reach, I didn't want the last stretch to be something I finished alone. This was one of those milestones that felt better shared, so I asked my guild if they'd be willing to help me the rest of the way. It didn't take long before another group came together, and just like that, we were heading back into Stratholme one more time. Knowing this would be my last dungeon run before max level made everything feel a lot more impactful. As we moved through the dungeon, I kept watching my experience bar climb higher and higher, realizing it wouldn't take much longer now. The end was close, closer than it had ever been. As we worked our way deeper into the dungeon, it started to feel like everything was lining up too well. With every pull, my experience bar kept getting closer and closer. By the time we reached Baron Rivendare, it almost felt scripted. Hitting level 60 on the final boss of one of the last dungeons in the game sounded like the perfect way to end the journey. The fight went smoothly, and when Baron Rivendare finally went down, I paused for a second, waiting for the familiar golden glow. I watched the experience bar fill, and then stop. I was close, painfully close, but not quite there. just a little bit away from max level. As we moved out of the final boss room, every pull felt like it could be the one. I kept watching my experience bar, waiting for that last little push to fall into place. Then there was one more ghoul standing right in front of me. Nothing special about the enemy, but the moment was different. One last fight, one last swing, and the screen flashed. Level 60. Hitting level 60 felt like finishing something I've been working toward for a long time. And for a moment, it really did feel like the end of the journey. But almost right away I kept hearing that this was actually where the game begins. So standing there in Stormwind, it finally started to make sense. Leveling had been the journey that brought me here, but raiding was what everything was building up towards. And for me, finishing this experience didn't mean stepping into a raid and standing in the back. It meant tanking one. Taking on the responsibility and seeing if I could actually hold my own. If I was going to be calling this the complete classic warrior journey, that had to be a part of it. So, that became the final goal. With that goal set, I knew I had some work to do before stepping into my first raid. Tanking at endgame meant preparation, and that meant tracking down the best previous gear I could get my hands on. I started running dungeons, revisiting places I've been to already, and focusing on stats like hit chance. Every upgrade felt intentional, leading to one more item I needed for raiding. And at the same time, there was one item I kept hearing about over and over again, a glowing green tanking weapon called Quel'Serrar. It quickly became more than just a weapon in my mind. It felt like something I needed to have in order to finish this journey. Before pushing any further, my guild leader asked me to report to Ironforge. I was told I was to receive a gift from the guild for reaching level 60. So standing there on the tram, heading to Ironforge, I had a lot of time to think about how far this journey had come. I wasn't always geared, confident, or even sure where I was supposed to be going. I remember being a low-level warrior, wandering through Stormwind without much direction, just trying to figure out what came next. Then, a message appeared, an invite to join Top Soul. And from that moment on, the journey felt different. I was welcomed in and guided forward. To forming dungeon groups and leveling together, to tackling elite quests I couldn't handle alone, to wearing crafted gear that helped me get through tough levels. There were hard moments, more deaths than I'd like to admit, and questions I probably asked more than once. But I was never left behind. So standing here now at level 60, getting ready to raid, everything had come full circle. From being the new player learning the game, to being trusted enough to step into raids and off-tank alongside the very same people who have helped me along the way. It meant a lot to me, and will always be a memory I'll hold on to. This journey didn't happen alone, and I wouldn't be standing here without Top Soul. So thank you so much for all that you've done. With Priebus coming together and attunements finished, it was finally time to step into my first raid. The guild had a Blackwing Lair run coming up, and suddenly, everything I've been preparing for felt very real. After completing both lower and upper Blackrock Spire, I finally was attuned for the raid. As soon as I stepped inside, it was obvious this wasn't anything like a dungeon. There were far more people, far more things going on at once, and a lot more responsibility. It felt like even if one person stopped paying attention for a second, the entire group could wipe. This was more about coordination than ever before. It didn't take long for the raid to show just how different this was from anything I'd done. Entire rooms were built around mechanics, not just enemies, and every step felt deliberate. There were moments where the entire raid had to move together, burst things down quickly, and react instantly. After working our way deeper into Blackwing Lair, the raid eventually reached the final room. This was the fight everything had been building towards. We were facing Nefarian, a name that everyone else seemed to understand immediately. I'll be honest, I had no idea who he was or how important he was supposed to be, so I clearly missed something along the way, but I definitely knew who Onyxia was. The battle itself was long and demanding, with everyone focused on their assignments and reacting to things as they happened. From my perspective, it wasn't just about doing damage. It was about listening to what was going on during the fight and reacting accordingly. And eventually, after everything, Nefarian went down. With Blackwing Lair behind us, the next raid on the schedule was Molten Core. Somehow, even after everything I'd just experienced, this place still managed to feel completely different. Molten Core was another massive fiery raid, But what stood out right away was how casual the entry felt. Literally jumping into lava just to get inside. It's one of those classic moments that felt strange the first time, but instantly memorable. One of the benefits of raiding this late in Classic was that a lot of the other warriors already had their gear. That meant that there was room for me to start picking up pieces that would help me move towards the role of off-tanking. With every pull and every boss, it felt like I was taking another step away from being just geared enough and closer to actually being off-tank ready. As the raid went on, the upgrades started coming together in a real way. Piece by piece, I picked up parts of the warrior tier set. The gloves, the breastplate, and the shoulders of might. With each piece equipped, I felt more comfortable stepping up when needed, holding aggro on certain enemies, and pulling my weight. After getting more of my gear together from raiding, there was still one item I wanted to finish before moving on. That was the Quell Sarar, the epic tanking sword I've been working towards since hitting level 60. To complete the quest, I had to enter Onyxia's lair. During the fight, I placed the sword on the ground in front of Onyxia, so it could be hit by her flame breath. After finishing the encounter, I left the raid and headed back out to complete the rest of the quest. The final step took me back to Dire Maul. With the quest complete, I finally received the epic Quell Sarar. With that finished, I was ready to move on to the next part of my journey. With raiding underway and progressing with most of my gear, there was finally a bit of downtime before the next raid. Instead of just waiting around, I decided to start working on something I put off for most of my journey: Battlegrounds. I didn't want to head into Burning Crusade with nothing but a lowly title, so I started queuing for Battlegrounds to grind out some honor. The first one I spent a lot of time in was Alterac Valley, and I enjoyed it a lot. I liked the snowy environment, the scale of the map, and the focus on objectives instead of just constant fighting. It felt more strategic than I expected, and it was a nice change of pace from dungeons and raids. Alterac Valley was one thing, but Warsong Gulch was a completely different experience. This wasn't just about objectives and NPCs. This was straight up player versus player. I ended up queuing with two guildmates, Mara and Tempest, which helped out a lot. Having familiar voices and people I trusted made jumping into PvP all the more fun. We ran flags, got into fights with horde players, and there were more than a few moments where I realized just how fun PvP actually was. With everything finally in place, there was one last thing left to do. I headed back to Stormwind to turn in the Dragon Head and finish out the final quest chain. Walking into Stormwind Keep felt different this time. I turned in the quest, accepted my reward, and received the Master Dragonslayer's Ring, an item I knew I'd be taking with me into the raid. And with that done, it was time to step back into Blackwing Lair. Not as someone tagging along, not as a DPS, but as an official off-tank. Standing there in the raid waiting for the next pull, my mind drifted back to where this journey began. Back in Elwyn Forest, fighting Defias or running for my life from a pack of Murlocs, crossing Azeroth just to forge a weapon, all for a boss in Duskwood, sprinting across entire zones with no mount, barely scraping by in Stranglethorn Vale, getting stuck in an endless grind in Blasted Lands. I thought about the dungeons, the wipes, the rare drops, all the moments that slowly led to this one. So standing here now, inside a raid, fulfilling the role I set out to play, and yeah, I probably got swiped once or twice, but I'm still learning, and that's what this entire journey has been about. So when we reached Nefarian again, it felt different. It was a moment that tied everything together, a full circle. From being a brand new warrior stepping into Northshire, to standing inside a raid, doing the job I set out to do. I'm proud of how far I've come. To everyone who watched these videos, followed along, left comments, and supported the channel in any way, thank you. And to my guild Top Soul, thank you for being such a huge part of this journey from start to finish. This might be the end of my leveling journey, but it's definitely not the end of an adventure. I'll see you in Azeroth.